It varies, to be fair. Some months I do.
All right. It looks like they're about to, well, let's see if we're up on the screen. I think we're ready. But I'll assume that it's going in the background and we're just not seeing the on there thing. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let everyone know the board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. Please note that any order of the board is valid for a period of 1 year. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, you must inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing. Tonight we have a full board, so that's not necessary. Petitioners shall do their best to limit presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in a public hearing shall do their best to limit comments to 3 minutes. All right. As stated, we got everyone here for the call to order, so therefore moving on to the minutes, is there any motions to amend or approve the minutes? I see a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
There's a second. Mr. Moore seconds. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. The unfinished business, case number 24-08-24, is also adjourned until next month. So we'll move on to new business, which is case number 24-09-27, which is 444 Arlington Drive. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Until 2012, lots 187, 189, 188, and 189 were all under common ownership. You can see that on the map shown on the screen. Each has its own tax identification number. However, that doesn't signify that each is capable of meeting the one-family residential zoning ordinance standards for being a single-family site that you can build a home upon. Together or collectively, they're considered one lot under a particular provision in the ordinance, which is in the report that you have. To disassociate lot 187 from 188 and 189 requires that 187 meet the minimum lot width, depth, and area requirements for the one-family residential zoning district. And it certainly doesn't based on its platted lot size. The overwhelming majority of the developed lots on the block that you can see on that map on the screen, they're comprised of various platted lots over time. And therefore, lot 187 by itself is unable to meet what we refer to as the compatibility provision in the zoning ordinance. So we recognizing lot 187 as a separate single-family home site via a land division requires variances from the minimum width, because it's 40 feet in width along the frontage of the roadway, and it is less than the minimum required 6,000 square feet in lot area. I believe it's a little over 5,000 square feet by itself. So our office did receive several correspondences that you do have in the packet, and we ask that you not only consider the non-use variance criteria that's listed in the zoning ordinance, but there's also some specific land division criteria that's noted in the report as well, that you keep that in mind too.
Thank you. Is there any questions from Mr. Murphy? Mr. Clark.
Mr. Murphy, it's a little bit confusing to me. Isn't there some type of legal process to either split a lot or join a lot? It's a little confusing to me. It seems like this was owned as one entity, but now he can't subdivide it. And then also, how do you sell a piece of property that isn't split per se?
It is unusual.
There are numerous examples of individual tax identification numbers within the city that are comprised of one or more segments of platted lots. And people do own adjacent tax identification numbers. They can be recognized as separate, we'll say, buildable lots only if they're able to stand on their own. But if they depend upon each other to meet the ordinance requirement, in this case, to meet the minimum lot size requirements, we view them under that section 770-21B1 of the zoning ordinance. It says that even though they're separate lots, we consider them one for the purpose of meeting the zoning ordinance provisions. So this is a particular instance where the lots, the three separate platted lots, were held under common ownership for many, many years. They were sold off as separate tax IDs can be sold without notification essentially to the city. But the trigger was when the developer, the current property owner approached us many years ago to talk about building a home there. That's when we conveyed to the individual that, well, you did purchase property that we're unable to recognize as separate buildable lots based on that particular ordinance provision. And again, it comes back to being able to meet the minimum lot width and the minimum lot area requirements for a new single-family home site. So while ownership has changed hands since that long duration, it still doesn't convey to someone the ability to have 187 recognized as a separate single-family home site unless it's obtained as the variances that are listed today. So it is very unique in the fact that they were platted, yes, as separate properties, but they were held in collective ownership for a long period of time. And in order for us to recognize it as a buildable lot, we do need to go through this formal process.
Thank you.
And if some board members may recall, as we've noted in the report, a similar variance request has been in front of you 2 prior times. This particular instance, they're seeking a variance just to recognize lot 187 as a separate, essentially buildable lot. But in prior instances, there were the 2 lots on the side 189 and 187. But this is just limited to 187.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that description. So if this were to be approved tonight, what would be the next step? Would this be a legal buildable lot where they would be able to just apply through the building department for permits?
Yes. They don't have to go through any land division application process through the assessor's office, since it wouldn't be changing in configuration, but it's our office's recognition that they've obtained the variance from that specific provision that I referenced and the report references. And yes, indeed, they would be capable of, at that point, developing construction drawings and applying for permits, presuming that they didn't need to come back to you to obtain variances to build whatever they have in mind. And I think that's probably a valid conversation to have with the applicant tonight.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, seeing none, if the petitioner is present, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Dennis Cowan with Plunkett Cooney, and I am representing Centurion Homes and its owner, Evan Carpenter, who is here this evening. So this is a simple request in the sense that it concerns a single lot, which is in a one-family residential zone. It's not in a large lot zone. And since 1924, lot 187 has been shown as a separate lot because it was subdivided that way in what is known as the Beverly Hills plat, which covers this entire general neighborhood and several streets. And every deed we could find since 1952 was this lot was separate with its own separate parcel ID number. I've heard Mr. Murphy's explanation, but I disagree with it, and I'll tell you why. You have to read the ordinance. The ordinance in question, 770-21B2, says that if a single lot of record of 2 or more contiguous lots under same ownership shall not be further divided. This lot is not owned by anyone on either side of it. And I believe this references same ownership now, not 100 years ago, not 50 years ago, not even 20 years ago. If the ordinance wanted to say that, then the ordinance should have been written that way. We don't have eternal ordinances in the sense of if you paint your house white, it has to be white forever. Or if you have one story, you can never add a second. That's not what this says. It speaks in current terms, under the same ownership. Lot 187 is owned by an entity owned by Shane McClure. 4444 is owned by Mr. Gapanik, and I believe 4436 on the other side is owned by Mr. Hatton. At least that's what the records in the BSNA system show. So we have separate ownership by the two lots. They are not owned by the same party. So we believe that this ordinance is not being applied correctly because it factually is not applicable. So even if you are not certain about that, and if that's the right way to go, there's another ordinance which I pointed out in my letter to you, which I think is very clear, and it was also clear to me that this ordinance was put into effect about the same time we went from whatever your lot size was you could build on it to a minimum of 50 feet, because I believe it was 2001. And that ordinance reads, and I'll just read it in pertinent part, it does reference 77021 because there are limitations in that ordinance regarding single-family homes. But it says that a single-family dwelling and customary accessory buildings may be elected on a lot of record, and I'm going to explain that term, at the effective date of adoption or amendment of this chapter. So what does that mean for this case right here? That if you had a lot of record that did not meet, I didn't read another pertinent part, I apologize, that this provision shall apply even though a lot fails to meet the applicable requirements for area and width. That's our situation. So applying this ordinance, 77113, to this situation means the following. If you had a lot of record when this was put into effect, then you have a buildable lot if your only issues are width or variance, width or area. And that's our case. It's exactly our case. And it's crystal clear why this was passed. Because the city didn't want to impair the property rights of property owners who had at one time a buildable lot at less than 50 feet, and then to say by fiat, we're just going to tell you can't build on it anymore. This is in essence a grandfather clause for those lots under 50 feet. Now that doesn't mean if you had a large lot that had been combined that you could go split it up into 40-foot lots. That you can't do. And that's not what we've done here. That's not what has happened. So as a result, whether you accept the interpretation that 770-21B2 is being misapplied factually because it does not have common ownership, it has separate ownership of both lot 187, the lot that our client is hoping to buy, and the other two lots. There is no common ownership between those two lots on either side. Or under 77113, where we have a specific reference that covers this exact situation, that you could have at one time what was a buildable lot, and as long as the only issues are area and width, and I can tell you that we're certainly, if this is approved, Mr. Carpenter has all the incentive in the world not to observe the setbacks and all the requirements, because otherwise he won't be able to build. So if the only two issues are area and width, which is the variances we are asking for, then this should be approved because it is specifically allowed under the zoning code. So I also want to reference you to the zoning district map that I took a pic, that I copied in as Exhibit D. It is very clear that many of the homes in this area, not the majority, but many of them are built on less than 50-foot lots. It's kind of hard to see that from here, but if you looked at the subdivision map and matched it up with this map, you would see that there are many homes with 50-foot or with less than 50 feet. In fact, on Sheridan, the next street over, there's a cluster of, I think it's 4 or 5 houses, which are around 40, 41, 42 feet each. So it is not like we are not introducing any new concept into either the immediate neighborhood or the general neighborhood. There are lots already existing there that are under 50 feet. If we were doing the sore thumb effect and we were going to be the only one, I could understand the concern. But this is very general and is throughout the area where there are houses already in existence under 50 feet. And in fact, on the end of the block, where this lot is, 187, both houses, the frontage on either side of this lot are 41 feet. And across the street, there's 2 others that are built on a roughly 40-foot lots. I think for some reason, even though a lot of these lots were like 41-foot width, I'm not sure how that happened, but that was back in 1924. So in that immediate part of the neighborhood, that there are already existing homes built on roughly 40-foot lots. So we are consistent on that end of the block. Now, other folks and other property owners over the years have assembled lots and chosen to have larger lots, and that's fine. That's their choice. But there's also been the choice of many people to build on their lot under 50 feet, and this is one of them. What, in essence, will happen here if a house is built is it's actually what I would call like an infill project. It's already between 2 very similar sized lots, and this lot would then have a house on it instead of being a vacant lot. So we would urge you to approve this request. I think it's important to note the property owner and Mr. Carpenter, by virtue of his purchase agreement, did not create this situation. This was actually created when the city changed the rules. And however well-intended, the rule was changed. And now we have a situation where the standard is a 50-foot lot as opposed to a 40-foot lot. So this wasn't created by either the current property owner or Mr. Carpenter. But I think, really, I look at, in this instance, the common sense rule. And that is that this house is very similar, or this lot, which we hope to put a house on, is very similar to many other lots in the area where houses have been built on, and there should not be an impediment based upon, I believe, what is a inappropriate application of 770-21. But you can't have it both ways. One of these ordinances has to apply. We believe 7113 clearly applies, and we would urge you to approve it as is allowed under the zoning ordinance. And as you can see, if you drive or look at a map, that there are already many homes in the area, in the general area, which have lots under 50 feet. And I think also I'd like to end on this note. Here's the good news. People want to move to Royal Oak. They want to buy a new home. Mr. Carpenter already has somebody interested in this lot who doesn't live here right now and would love to move here and be able to build a new home and be in a wonderful neighborhood. And I do want to compliment that neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. And I believe that adding this house will add additional beauty to the neighborhood and additional value. And so as a result, I think that's the good news. We have people who want to move here, and we have people who want to build houses, and that's important because it shows the strength and the dynamic nature of the community. So I thank you very much for your time, and either Mr. Carpenter or I will be able to answer any questions. And one final note, I believe, cover adequately all 4 of the standards in my letter, but I'd certainly be willing to discuss any of those 4 standards, review standards with you. Thank you.
Mr. Kaplan.
I guess I'm a little confused, just in the sense of what we have presented before us is a request for a variance, and we have those set standards in terms of how to review those and what factors we have to review. A lot of what you've discussed here is really disputing the interpretation of the grandfather clause and that sort of stuff. It doesn't seem to me like we have an appeal of that decision to ignore, or as you say, the interpretation of those provisions by staff. So I don't, well, I understand why you're bringing them up. I don't know that it's relevant for our review tonight, because then if all that we have in front of us is these variance requests, then we just have to analyze those under our factors the standard factors that we have. So I welcome your input on that, and I'd also welcome staff's input on that and legal input if necessary.
I'll defer to staff if they want to talk first, and then I will follow up.
You're correct. They're not asking for an interpretation of how we applied the ordinance, but rather a variance from the ordinance provisions. We believe our office's stance or position has remained unchanged since whenever it's referred to that they were back the prior to two instances. So our office's position hasn't changed, and you're correct. They are not asking for an interpretation.
Okay. I appreciate that, because I have a lot of thoughts about the other ones, but if they're not relevant, I'm not going to get into them. I would rather just focus on the factors that we have before us, which are the standards that we have. But that's my one clarification I wanted to make. So thank you. Oh,
If I could, my rebuttal, if it might be, well, I'll state the obvious. The staff is the one that wrote up the report that brought up the ordinance. We're saying that ordinance is being misapplied factually, and we're pointing out another ordinance. So I think that is important, because what your zoning board, what you're expected to do, is enforce the laws with taking into account the factors. But what the staff wrote up was what the ordinance said, and we're saying it's not factually accurate to just somehow wipe it away by saying, well, they were common ownership at one time. Well, that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance talks about common ownership, and it talks about it in a current reference, not in a forever reference, an eternal reference. And I would say, if you look at the four factors, would the denial unreasonably prevent us from using this property for permitted purpose? Obviously, it's a vacant lot now in a residential neighborhood, and we would hope that a home could be placed there. And so it is a permitted use. Also, is there any substantial injustice? No, there isn't. This was a plat that at one time was all 40-foot lots. And that plat, by the way, has never been amended. Nobody's asked for it ever to be amended. It remains 40-foot lots, that entire plat, and all the lots of record are roughly 40 feet. So is there any injustice? No, because there are numerous homes in that area which are on lots under 50 feet. Is the plight of the landowner due to unique circumstances of the property? Yes, because it's a 41-foot lot, and based upon the interpretation that the city's making, it's not buildable. So I'd call that, you can't get more unique than that. As a result of our interpretation, you can't build, period. And then finally, was this hardship created by any person presently having an interest in the property? And the answer is obviously no. We did not create this. This was created by an ordinance, and no owner created this situation. So I would say both are important, both the ordinance and its interpretation, and the fact that there's another ordinance that nobody wants to talk about except us, but another ordinance that specifically addresses this. I mean, you can't find an ordinance clearer than 770-113 to this situation. And quite frankly, I was kind of stunned that it was there. But now when you read it in context with what was happening with expanding frontage requirements, and then also saying, but at the same time, well, we're not going to take away your property right, which is, I believe, what 770-113 says. Well, it makes perfect sense. And we believe 770-113 should be enforced.
Other questions?
I have two. First, is Mr. Carpenter currently the owner, or is it still?
No, he has purchase agreement for the property. It's owned by an entity, I think it's called McClure Homes, but We are required, and did give a copy, when you submit, you have to have an ownership, when you submit to the ZBA, you have to have an ownership interest or ownership, and our ownership interest is the purchase agreement, and we submitted that. That was, you have to submit that to the city as proof, and we did that when we submitted the application.
Is the purchase agreement subject to this variance request going through?
Well, you have a due diligence period that you're allowed to go get any approvals that you need, either for a home you might build or variances. So yes, all agreements of that nature have a due diligence period where you can get your approvals, and if you receive those, then you can move forward and sell the property.
Okay, then my second question might just be a statement. Even though it might not be relevant, you're saying that 770-113 absolutely controls this, but that provision says it's subject to 770-21, and I forgot to bring my copy of 770-21B21, but I think it says if it was under common ownership at the time the ordinance was enacted, that the 40-foot exemption that you're talking about wouldn't apply.
I don't remember that, but I remember seeing it in 770-113.
Just a follow-up on that. 770-113, as quoted in your letter, references a lot of record at the effective date of adoption or amendment of this chapter. And I believe that the 50-foot rule was adopted in 2001,
Right.
which was prior to the 2012 sale, which would make that the effective date of the amendment. So that's a lot of record as of 2001, effectively, rather than, looking back all the way to not the date of the plat.
Okay.
Because otherwise, what I would see is that the plats would be, it would just open up everything for all the plats. You can't look back to the plat
Well, but
for
it's
everything.
important. You brought up a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Here's what the lot of record is defined in your ordinance at 778 under the definition section. And here's what a lot of record is. It's not what somebody says it is or makes up a rule about continuous parcels. It's very specific. A lot, the dimensions of which are shown on the subdivision plat recorded in the office of the Register of Deeds for Oakland County. It also has some language about a lot if you have an accurate survey, but that's really not germane here. So a lot of record is the 40-foot lot, because that's the lot showing, lot 187, that's the lot showing on the subdivision plat, which is recorded with the Register of Deeds in Oakland County. So a lot of record under the city's definition, not mine, the city's definition is lot 187 stands alone as a lot of record, not 3 lots owned by separate individuals somehow being combined.
I understand that, but I think the city's interpretation, and under my understanding, is that you have to read that in conjunction with 770-21, which also provides that single lot of record or 2 or more contiguous lots under the same ownership shall not be further divided. And it talks about, where I saw it here. For purposes of this chapter, 2 or more contiguous lots held under common ownership shall be considered 1 lot. So I understand your argument, and I do.
I would only add to that it talks about the limitations of section 121B2. Limitations are as to width, setbacks, and things of that nature. Limitations are not talked about in terms of property ownership. I just want to point that out.
Mr. Moore, and then Mr. Lineweber, and then Mr. Wolf.
Sure. One of our criteria for non-use variance is that the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. Your client doesn't currently own the property, but the owner who does own the property bought a piece of property in 2012 that was not wide enough to build on. So therefore, they have an interest in the property, and the hardship is essentially created by them doing that. What is the explanation for that?
My explanation is very simple, and I've made this explanation before. This section is many times misunderstood. If if this was enforced the way most people read it, you could never even ask for a variance, because the mere fact, you can't eliminate asking for a variance. What this has to do more with, and if you read the cases on this, is that I'm coming asking for permission to do something. I'm not coming after the fact. Like, I've already built the house and now I'm asking for permission to do this. This comes up a lot in fence cases. People build the fence and then are coming for the after the fact. That is self-created. You already took action. We haven't taken any action on the property, and neither did Mr. McClure, and neither did all the other people who bought the house. Nobody ever took any action with respect to building anything on the property. So we're asking for permission. So we didn't create that. That is intended for that when people actually violate the ordinance and they've created the hardship by building a fence too high or not angling it or whatever, then they're coming and asking for permission, and then they wouldn't meet that criteria. So that's how that is generally interpreted in the law. Okay?
Mr. Landweber.
I go back to the question about that timeline, in that somebody purchased the lot after 2001, and in purchasing that lot, in essence, by the existing owner selling it, they created a non-conforming, the existing home that's on that site adjacent to this lot is now non-conforming with its setback from the property line.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, how can, I guess, the city look at a separation of an existing lot that is comprised of 3 parcels that creates a non-conforming condition? It would be, I guess, in an extreme, like you sell the land under your garage, and then, I'm just curious how the city or the tax, the Register of Deeds could accept a property sale that creates this kind of an issue.
Well, it's very simple, because it was a lot of record under the records in Oakland County. What Royal Oak has done, for better or worse, with this, it's a rule that we consider you to have contiguous lots if it's under common ownership. But I would say that has the city of Royal Oak's never filed anything with the Register of Deeds. The city's never tried to change the plat. They've never said you have to combine or they've never tried to have individuals combine their lots. So following the law, which is a state law under the Plat Act, Oakland County is obviously going to say, if there's somebody comes with a deed and it's a lot that has its own parcel ID number and its own legal description, they're going to allow a deed, they're going to allow things to be sold. And stop and think about that. Do we want to have the city controlling what's sold and what isn't? The government telling us what to do? No, absolutely not. And I think, again, I would point to this 770-113, which explicitly explains that if you have a lot of record, which we did, the lot of record has always existed back to 1924. Forget about if it was sold or not, because that's irrelevant. This has been a lot of record since 1924. So that's 100 years. So for 100 years, it's been a lot of record under state law, under the Subdivision Act, and with Oakland County. And so, and at one time in this town, it was a buildable lot. But the city has said in its own ordinance, if at the time this was passed, not a subsequent sale, there's no language in that ordinance about if they're in 770-113, if it changed ownership and the lot and the parcel configuration changed. Let's make very clear. There at one time were 3 lots. They may have comprised 1 parcel, but they were 3 under the city's rules, but they were 3 separate lots and they were taxed separately. So 770-113 is the fallback position that if somebody had one of these types of lots that became non-conforming because of the ordinance, not because of a sale of property, it doesn't say that, because of the ordinance, then they have the right, if their only variances are area and width, to build on that lot. That's exactly what 770-113 says. And I hope I've explained why Oakland County accepted the deed, because they had They had a separate parcel ID number, and they had the right owners, and they checked it all out, and they processed it.
Mr. Wolf.
This is for the applicant. I'm sorry, I missed your name, but I want Mr. Carpenter. Thank you. So you said you had somebody that was interested in purchasing the lot or building the home on this lot?
That's correct.
Okay, so how many square feet approximately are they thinking about?
But right around 2,400.
Okay, so that's about a 50% lot coverage if this was to be approved. So that would require another variance.
No. Two-story house, 1,200 feet each. So you got 1,200 feet. There's no way.
Okay,
You're not
no,
going to build a large ranch there. It's going to be a two-story home.
Okay, that was the question I wanted to
Okay,
ask because that was the part that I was missing in this. So thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for the petitioner? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Zook.
So, under your interpretation of the ordinance, am I correct that somebody could come in and buy up that whole block, tear down all the houses, and then build a house on each 40-foot lot?
Well, they could, the city ordinances provide that if you had a lot of record, a 40-foot lot, well, first of all, let me just say this. First of all, the issue about lots being divided, or if there was a combination and people wanted to split up, that exists today. That isn't going to rise or fall on the decision of the zoning board here today. But the law does allow that if it was a 40-foot lot at that time, that other than area and width, if somebody applied, you'd have to have a lot of actions taken that somebody could apply for that, yes.
Any other questions? I do have a question for you.
Sure.
This has come before us in 2012. This has come before us in 2016. Both times, it was caused by, if I recall, person bought it without doing due diligence ahead of time, knowing that they can't build a house, and now coming after the fact and doing so. What has changed since 2016 or 2012 from those previous decisions that would cause this board to have to render a different decision?
Both those requests, I believe, were for two lots. They were for lots 187 and 189, and we're only requesting one, which fits between two homes, which already are under 50-foot lot width. That's the difference.
Okay.
So it's a factual difference.
Okay.
And I think that weighed on the minds of the board at that time, that we were asking for two lots instead of the one.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to public comment.
Thank you very much for your questions.
You're welcome. Public comment is open. Feel free to come forward if there's anyone to speak for or against this case. You don't have to be shy. We don't bite much, just nibble.
Much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Gifford, so new resident to Royal Oak, 2 houses away, 4432 Arlington. I don't have as much data or information regarding the ordinances or policies, but I guess just my experience as a resident, someone who just purchased a home on the block. It's a beautiful home. We bought it because the block has a lot of charm, a lot of character, and I would be very impressed to see anyone try and build a home on that tiny lot that's proposed that could match the quality of any of the homes that are already there. It wouldn't fit the character. I also don't think that it would be a sustainable use for the home because, you know, a lot of times it's younger families like I have myself that are moving into the area. My opinion would be that, you know, you get them to live there for a couple years. As soon as they have, you know, their first child, they're going to realize, hey, there's no backyard, there's no front yard. Let's move out and let's go. And now you're stuck with this house. It's probably going to repeat over and over. And the house is also built all the way up to the sidewalk, all the way to the backyard. I don't see that as a great use for the lot. Also having it being called a vacant lot, I think that's misleading. whoever takes care of the lot and mows it now, it's very impressive. It's very well maintained. It's not like it's an eyesore in the neighborhood. Some much needed space, in my opinion. And I don't have a ruler, but I'd venture to guess that if I took it up to the lot that's being discussed, it is going to be the absolute smallest one on that entire map. So I just personally, and I think if you go up to all the residents that live all across the block, you could knock on our door and we'd all probably just say, no, please don't approve this. But maybe I'm speaking for too many of my neighbors. So with that, I'll conclude. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come forward.
Good evening, everyone. Josh Patton. I actually live in 4436 Arlington, which is the property right next door. Just to kind of echo what Joe just said, part of the reason my wife and I moved into that neighborhood is because part of the appeal was having that large space between us and the house next to it. Joe's house is actually right next to ours on the other side, and it's very, very close. We live on a 40-foot plot of land, but I can say with confidence that if there had already been a house at 444 Arlington, we wouldn't even considered our current house. It's way too narrow. And it would create sort of this sandwich effect between, the house next to us and the eventual house. Just wouldn't be desirable. So I'd sort of challenge the fact that building another house on that narrow lot wouldn't result in some diminution of value, or if we were to ever sell our house, I firmly believe that it would reduce the appeal of that house and sort of reduce the population of potential buyers that we would be able to sell to. So I echo Joe's sentiments, and thanks for the consideration. So I'm opposing the request.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Don Van Teen. I live at 4424 since 1989, so I've been there a little while. My lot has two 40-foot registered lots and two 20-foot on each side that were split, I don't know how many years ago. So if this goes through, what we're all worried about is that everybody like me would decide we can put 3 houses up on our lot because they wouldn't be registered or whatever he's talking about. It's just a bad idea. They sold the lot, like you guys all said at the time. They knew it wasn't buildable. They keep trying to get this done. The only thing I would like is if we could make this permanent once we do this, because I've been here the 3rd time. Thank you.
Anyone else speak for this? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Rick Lane, and I've lived on 4174, which is quite a ways down Arlington. I moved here in 2013 when I retired. I'm a double oaker. I own 2 homes in Royal Oak. I own the home on Arlington, and I own the home that I was raised in on 13 and Blair. Now, one's a 40-foot lot on 13 and Blair, and the other one is a better than 50-foot lot on Arlington. The Blair house is about 1,200 square feet, and it's perfect for my granddaughter, my daughter, and my son-in-law. But a 2,200 square foot house at the corner of 13 and Blair would be an eyesore. When I moved here 13 years ago, it was made clear to me that there was 50-foot frontage, and that's why I was moving in there. I, too, like the neighborhood, and I love the feeling and the ambiance of that neighborhood. And like Mr. Moore stated, I don't see where the hardship of somebody buying a lot that's obviously not buildable comes into play here. But I would suggest not approving this. And thank you for hearing me.
Anyone else? Oh.
No, I really, Sorry. My name's Melissa Konopka. I live at 4419 Arlington, across the street from the lot. Definitely not vacant. It is well maintained. Anyways, I am from Macomb County, grew up over there. My husband and I decided to move to this side of town for basically work purposes. We initially had a purchase agreement on a house in Birmingham. Decided against it as we have friends in the neighborhood on different streets. We bought our house in 2018 based on going from a 2,800 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot in Birmingham. We are fortunate that we have a double lot. We have 2 kids now. As everyone said, it's the appeal of the neighborhood. The newer houses south of Normandy that have put in, they do not fit the aesthetics and the appeal of what makes, especially our street, pretty special in my opinion. I just don't think it's a good idea. There's families that don't need small lots, or as Joe said, they'll move out. It'll be a revolving thing. So yes, people want to move to Royal Oak, but I just don't think that is the house or the plot of land for that purpose. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dennis Herman. I live in 4451 Arlington Drive. And I would like to comment on Mr. Cohen's statement of this has to be grandfathered in. What would be the consequence if you just go through the neighborhood, buy any small lot, 40, 35, maybe push it a little bit, 30 feet, and then just come here and say, listen, I can't build on it. Let's grandfather it in and make it possible. So I don't really agree with that statement, and I hope you will share my evaluation of that statement. Also, from Mr. Moore, the self-inflicted. I really hope for Mr. Carpenter that he has a contingency in that purchase agreement, that he didn't pay anything yet until this gets approved, hopefully in his favor. So Mr. McClure made the mistake back in the day, just buying the lot, hoping, the neighborhood, they're old, they're pushovers, they don't get off the couch and come to these zoning board of appeal meetings to contest the variance. And he was hoping to make a quick buck. I just buy some houses, a lot on the left, a lot on the right, put some nice houses on it, and then he's out and go to the next neighborhood and purchase up all the small lots that he can get. All right, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else to speak on this? Yes, you can come forward.
Nancy Poprovsky, concerned citizen. I didn't know about this actual Arlington thing, and I am an old person, and I come to meetings. So I'm urging the public on Monday, this coming Monday, September 16th at 6 o'clock, there's a town hall, and I'm hoping that this zoning board will turn down the Arlington project. And I also hope that everyone will be there to voice your opinion on other things that are happening throughout the city and in my neighborhood that we already took a hit. So thank you for listening.
Anyone else speak on this case? No?
My name is Bob Schell, and I live at 4117 Arlington. I've been in the neighborhood for 30 years. And as been pointed out, the original restriction of 50 feet was passed in 2001, and now twice developers have tried to build, and it's been voted down twice, which I think has been a good decision. I don't know if you know or not, but across the street from this at 4447, and I got to look at the plat thing when it was bigger, there's a 100-year-old house that was bought by a developer, and he assured us that he was going to keep the structure and renovate it and do great things with it. And to his word, he was doing that daily. He cleared the lot that doesn't have anything on it. He was going to build a garage there. The inside is brought right down to the studs. But that daily work has stopped since this had come up before the board. But the only thing I can think of is that, these developers know the rules when they go in. They know what they're getting into. And if they don't, then shame on them for not doing the due diligence. But I think my concern is, and probably everybody here, is that if you allow a house to be built where there's none, there's going to be 2 built where there's 1. And we don't want that. Thank you.
You don't have to clap after every time. Is there anyone else to speak? Oh, you don't have to raise your hand. You just come forward if no one else is standing up. I know. You're being very polite. I thank you
My
very much.
name is Gail McLaughlin. I live at 4411 Arlington Drive. I've lived there for over 30 years. And everybody has said the same things that I'm thinking, but this gentleman that pointed out that there's a number of other lots in our neighborhood that are 40 feet or so. The homes that are on those lots are smaller homes that fit into this neighborhood, and we have a variety of houses in there's some ranches and there's some Tudors, and but they actually fit on the lot. And the homes that I'm seeing built in Birmingham and in a lot of places in our neighborhood and on the other side of Woodward, but again in our neighborhood, are these big, giant homes that just overshadow the other homes that are right next to it. I look at some of these new builds and I feel so sorry for these people that are in homes next to them that have this giant house there. It just, it'd be one thing if the construction was going to try to match the neighborhood, but I don't see that happening in all the new builds throughout Royal Oak and Birmingham, which we're very close to. So I have a big concern about that, and I also want to echo, I'm not sure why we're doing this again. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else on this case? Going once? Oh. That's fine.
I'm Chris Waters at 4190 Arlington, and this is either the second or third time that I've been here with the rest of the neighborhood trying to defend the integrity of it. And it's always around this one lot. And yeah, last time we talked about 2 lots. Well, the other lot was bought by someone in the neighborhood to actually just kill the drama. So nothing has changed since 2012 and 2016. The variances were denied then, and they should be denied now. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak on this? Going once, going twice. Last call. All right. We'll bring it back to the side of the board for discussion and or motions. Anyone? Mr. Gavin, go ahead.
I move to deny the variance as requested.
Is there a second? Anyone to second his motion to deny, if you raise? Or did you raise your hand? Sorry. I missed. Sorry, Ms. Robinson did. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
All right. The chapters, I'm going to go through each of our 4 factors to start with. The chapter's restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. I don't think it's unreasonable in the sense that this sale occurred well after the 50-foot lot restriction was put in place. I think it is an unfortunate circumstance, and it kind of fell through the cracks because the tax parcels weren't combined, which would normally flag this for people, but that's the ordinance is pretty straightforward about if 2 contiguous lots have the same owner, they are 1 lot, and that needs to be read as a whole. So in that sense, I think it's unfortunate, and that the sale occurred and kind of the developer at the time in 2012 was left holding the bag on this. But the restrictions are pretty clear, and I don't think that they're unreasonably preventing the owner from using it for a permitted purpose. B, the variance would do substantial justice to the applicant that's clear. He wants to build a house. But it also has to do substantial justice to the other property owners in the district. And we have a stack of emails, and we have heard a number of neighboring property owners, and I think we've only heard from a portion of them tonight, that they don't think this is good for their neighborhood. And a lesser relaxation than that requested would not give substantial relief to the owner of the property or be more consistent with justice to other property owners. There is no lesser relaxation. We can't say, oh, you could build on a lot of 45 feet, because the lot size is what it is. So it has to be granted or not. So there is no lesser relaxation available. So that factor fails. Plight of the landowner is due to unique circumstances of the property. I will grant that. I think it's unfortunate that it kind of fell through the cracks and the sale in 2012 went through. And it's kind of like an orphaned piece of property that nobody really can do anything with. So it is unfortunate, but it is a unique circumstance to that property. And the alleged hardship was not created by any person presently having an interest in the property. I don't think that the current owner or the present intended purchaser created this hardship, but I think for failing those first two factors, this does not deserve to be granted. I'll also address the additional criteria for land divisions. The width, size, and general character of the lots in the neighborhood and area. It's just much smaller. I know there are a lot of 40-foot size lots in that area, but they're not that many. And there's a lot of lots there that are much larger than that because they're all combined. The width and shape of the lot leaves adequate buildable area to allow the construction of a dwelling which is in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. That would be a tough one to meet, I think. It's just not, it could be done, but most houses nowadays that would sell are not going to be in character with the neighborhood there. And the extent to which other developed lots in the neighborhood and or area have maintained required yards, lot areas, and width. I mean, so a lot of them are grandfathered in, but many of them are much larger than that, so they do maintain those. So I think only 2 of those 3 could possibly be met, but I think it'd be a stretch. So for that reason, I think, I'm not in favor of granting this variance.
Okay. Mrs. Robinson, anything to
I
add?
agree with everything you just said. I just don't think this is the way to go about saying that this is going to fit in with the neighborhood. And it does concern me too, because there's a lot of property in the south end of town where there are 30-foot lots. And I just can't even see that you could go back then and start saying we could build on a 30-foot lot because it was grandfathered in. So I too will be not in favor.
Okay. Anyone else like to, Mr. Reddy?
Mr. Murphy, a question?
Sure.
Oh, Mr. Murphy, I had a question. Would the width, I think the answer to this is yes, but I just want to make sure. Other permitted uses besides single-family homes, like daycare or a museum, they would have the same width requirement and lot size requirement?
Some of those commercial uses that you had referenced, they don't have defined width requirements.
Oh,
they
lot.
do.
This is single family. They can't put something not residential and residential.
Yeah, there are a number of permitted uses in one-family residential.
I think I see
Okay,
where
gotcha.
your logic. Yes, there are a variety of other permitted uses in this district. It's tough to answer a scenario question as to whether those 6, 7, 8, whatever number of them they are, would be suitable for this location. Obviously, a school or a municipal building like a fire station is allowed in one-family residential, but on a 40-foot lot, it's never going to happen.
Right. So I mean, I guess I was just my question is anything ever going to be possible here? Like, would any of these other uses, would the 40-foot width be applicable? Would be allowed?
I don't know that I can give you an exhaustive answer on that.
But it doesn't necessarily apply. So they could potentially use
There are a variety of permitted and special land uses.
Yeah.
Yes, that you've identified, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf?
I'm going to go against the grain and vote against the motion to deny. I was toying with this one, and it was kind of hard for me to think about it, but because what really got to me was that the other buildings there were on the same 40-foot lot from what I saw both in person and on Google Maps. And while I personally don't feel very comfortable about having a 2,200 square foot house on that lot, it has been a legal parcel since 1924. And, it was, treated as one parcel for many years, but then obviously there were two other houses built on that other 2/3 of the parcel. So for me, that just sounds like the city's already done it once. Why are they not, allowing this to happen again? So that was for me the part that came in to my mind. I do know that the variance was denied twice, but I was looking at the houses on the other side of the parcel. The other question that made me vote, or is going to make me vote against my colleague, Mr. Garvin, is, as it is, it was at one point treated as one lot, even though there were 3 different tax rolls, but now they're treated as 3 different lots. So for me,
Sorry, please let him speak.
so, if there are 3 different tax rolls with 3 different houses with 3 different parcels, for me, that seems like a separate lot.
Any other discussion? Mr. Lineweber?
I think using the 770-113 applicability is problematic. And in effect, what that would do is take all of, the royal, pardon me, it would take the zoning and nullify it and go back to the original platted lots and parcels that were identified back in the 1920s. I think the community's evolved, and you can see this particular community, the sizes of the homes, the combination of lots, whether the tax ID numbers were combined or not, they're still used and behave as larger lots. That I think that this taking this particular lot and reverting back is problematic. I'm sympathetic with the desire to split these homes and kind of reap the benefits of that, but I think that it does create future hardship for the entire neighborhood, and that's something that we are tasked to avoid. So I'll be voting for the motion.
Okay. Other comments? I have a quick question for you, Mr. Wolf, before I make comments. So in looking at all the requirements and needing to meet all 4 criteria, in your mind, it meets all 4 criteria? Because if it doesn't, then you theoretically should be denying.
Yeah, so I'm going to go backwards here. It was definitely not self-created. It was, there are uniquely identified characteristics in this property because, again, there's the other, let me take a step back. The least relief required, like what would be lesser relief? That's the other question that came into my mind. There is no lesser relief. The substantial justice that came in, the practical difficulty is that this was platted wrong. It was platted back in the 1920s, and there were other houses that were subsequently built. And so then the strict compliance with the standard, I mean, again, if this was the only, if all 3 let me take a step back. The first time I read this and before I went and saw it, I thought, well, why don't they just combine both lots in the middle and then have 2 parcels? Obviously, that's not possible. So the only thing that's possible with what you see with the other houses that are there, the only houses that you see that are there are, it's like those houses were built in too. Whether or not you like the ordinance or what, if it was built in a legal way back then, it would be that way now. My house is on a 40-foot lot, and that's what I was doing the math in my head. You could not legally build on my parcel right now. But what would happen as a property owner? So that was what was going through my mind.
Okay. And Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I'll be supporting the motion. I do believe that this is self-created by the current owner who bought the property that was not wide enough to build on, so therefore the hardship was created by a person presently having an interest in the property.
Any other comments? Mr. Reddy?
Oh, yeah. So I'm a little torn, somewhat similar to Mr. Wolf, in that these, the chapter's restrictions are making this lot pretty much unusable. I mean, even for the other permitted uses in the zone. So that is something that we should try to grant relief where we can. However, I think I will be voting in favor, but I am a bit torn on this one.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, I will be voting in favor of this. A couple of reasons. One, there's definitely at least one of these that can't be met, which is doing this would change substantially the neighborhood, potentially starting the ball rolling that this is just the first one that falls down, and before you know it, the neighborhood changes because now we've created and allowed another smaller lot on this area. Number two, this was created a hardship by the owner because they bought the land without doing due diligence. Yes, I feel bad for them not doing their due diligence, but if we granted it in this case, then anyone else who was a developer could go like, oh, I'll do the same thing. I'll just buy a lot, split it off, just complain, oh, I didn't know about it, and wait till I get far enough along to say, oh, or spin it off to my brother who will now build on it. I'm sorry, it's this the way it was. They brought on that problem themselves. That was the problem. That's why I got voted down the previous two times. So at the very least, because of those two things and not having met all four criteria, I agree this needs to be denied. So I'll be voting in favor of the variance being denied. Yes, Ms. Supran.
I agree with everybody who's voting in favor, but in response to your comment that the original purchaser didn't do due diligence, Mr. McClure is a builder, and I think he knew. And he was just hoping he would get a variance.
I'm trying to be nice and give him the benefit. So, all right, any other comments? If not, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the variance to be denied, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The motion carries. The variance is denied. Thank you. And we'll take a minute to let people clean out because it's seeming like there's going to be a bunch that leave.
That was the big one, that additional criteria being common.
If you're in for that last one, please exit as fast as you can and be quiet about it so that we can move on to the next case.
Did you say exit as quick as you can? I said, did you say exit as quick as you can? That was great.
I love it. You guys said the way you guys think is totally.
All right.
It was good.
If someone could shut those doors there, thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to case number 24-09-28 for 2717 Ardmore Avenue. Whenever you are ready, please take it away.
Recently purchased the adjacent property to the north, and they've demolished all the structures on the site. They've submitted an application to the assessor's office for combining those pieces of property. At the end of that process, they will have one tax identification number. the land division combined results in one singular larger lot, which measures 100 feet in width along Girard, and it would contain 18,800 square feet, which translates to roughly 0.43 acres. They are, if we look at the front elevation, it'll give you an understanding as to the current house. And what they propose to do is to construct a second-story addition along the north side, and that's shaded in that outline, darker outline that you see. It would include, on the ground floor, it would contain additional floor area for the existing attached garage, so a bigger attached garage, with living space behind that on the first floor, and then additional living space on the second floor. The table in the report will illustrate the existing and the resulting usable floor area. So you probably recall that we have a maximum allowable usable residential floor area of 3,500 square feet. And the table illustrates that it illustrates the ground floor and the second floor additional floor area and the resulting 4,087 square feet that would occur based on their proposed additions. And again, the maximum allowable is 3,500 square feet, so they're seeking a waiver of that difference. The attached garage must comply with the front yard setback, and the minimum front yard setback for this property is 33 feet. Measured to the nearest point of the front of the garage, it's 29.2 feet right now, so it's non-conforming. And they're proposing to expand that attached garage. It'll have a slight jog in the offset of the existing front attached garage, but the front yard setback measured to the new portion of the attached garage will be non-conforming at 30.9 feet. Again, it needs to be no less than 33 feet. So they are seeking a variance to expand the non-conforming garage in a non-conforming way and to waive 2.1 feet of that minimum front setback. There is a provision which indicates that a front entry attached garage can project no more than 7 feet out in front of the ground floor living space of a house. Clearly, based on the photograph that's in the report, the existing attached garage is non-conforming in that it projects out 20.8 feet. The additional front portion of the attached garage that they're proposing would stick out 20.8 feet from the nearest point of living space on the ground floor. So they're seeking a waiver from that provision. As we know, a front entry attached garage can be no more than 50% of the total front facade of the entire structure. And the resulting additional portion of an attached garage, that equals 55.6 feet. So the existing attached garage plus the additional bay that they're adding, those equate to 55.6 feet of the front facade. They're seeking a variance from that provision in the ordinance. And then there's an additional table in the report that's specific to the number and square footage and percentage of accessory structures that are present and proposed. So the zoning ordinance allows no more than 2 accessory structures, and there are a variety of accessory structures. The 2 that most come to mind are attached garages and detached garages. Others are sheds, carports, and in this case, pool pavilions. So our office has no record of the 2 existing sheds that are on the back side of the property, the rear of the property and the rear yard. We don't have any record of those. We do have a record of the original building permit of the attached garage itself, which complied with the number and the square footage for an accessory structures. But the 2 sheds, they push over the limit of no more than 2 accessory structures. And the petitioner is proposing to, as I noted before, expand the existing attached garage. And they're also proposing to build a pool pavilion or shelter adjacent to a pool that they're proposing. So the pool doesn't need a variance, but the additional structure the pool pavilion, that does require a variance. You'll see that that table highlights that there'll be 4 accessory structures at the end of this process, 2 sheds, 1 larger attached garage, and a pool pavilion. I think the table does an excellent job of highlighting what the square footage is for each of those, and then what the sum total of those are. You will note that the sum total of those is less than 10% of that increased size lot at 0.43 acres, but it still exceeds the maximum allowable number of 2 accessory structures, and it certainly exceeds the maximum floor area that's allowed for accessory floor area of up to 800 square feet, and they go far above and beyond that. So they're seeking variances to the number of accessory structures and to the maximum square footage that's allowable for accessory structures. Lastly, the petitioner is exposing to expand the driveway width at the property line. And so obviously they have an attached garage now that'll be getting wider. They want to widen that drive approach and their driveway on their property to meet that set of overhead doors associated with the attached garage. We do allow a maximum driveway width of 25 feet, and we measure that at the property line. Based on the petitioner's illustration, that measured their proposal would widen the existing driveway to 38 feet. So they are seeking a variance to go above and beyond that 25 feet. And our office did receive a written correspondence with regard to this request, and that's included in your packet.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Murphy? Go ahead, Ms. Zukin.
Mr. Murphy, this looks like a newer house to me, existing already. Do you know if there were variances granted for those non-conforming numbers prior to this?
I don't recall when it was built and whether those ordinance provisions were in place at the time it was constructed. Yes, it's a relatively new structure for Royal Oak, but I don't know whether it was built prior to those. The provision which limited a garage to being only 7 feet out in front of the ground floor of the house, and the setbacks, those came into play in 2001. So I don't know whether it was constructed just prior to that or after, and that would certainly affect whether it was conforming at the time, or I didn't see any record in our file, and perhaps Mr. Bohorski can confirm that there were any prior variances. So it appears as though it probably conformed at the time it was built.
I didn't see any prior records of past variances, but I do recall that the building permit did indicate that the house was built in 2004.
So perhaps it was an oversight.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Murphy? Mr. Reddy.
I have 2 regarding the written correspondence. One, it didn't seem like there was a name. Was it like an error attaching, or it just didn't come in with one?
I'm sorry, I don't recall. Maybe we can bring it up the last page.
Yeah, I didn't see a name or address of the neighbor. And the other part was immediately prior to that, it looks like there's a sample petition.
Yes, and I think that was something that was dropped off at our office that we scanned, that last page that you're referring to. So you're right, it was unidentified individuals submitting that to us. And the petitioner can speak to what has been provided
Okay,
to you with
I wanted to
their
make sure
signatures.
if there was a missing document there. Okay.
No. The last page that you see was dropped off exactly like that at our office.
Other questions for Mr. Murphy? Mr. Wolf, is that the hand? No? Okay. Anyone else? I had a question, Mr. Murphy. If they got rid of the sheds and with that part of the pavilion, that would theoretically, would that still count as 2 accessory structures, or no, because it would be still part of it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Like
that?
if they took the
Sorry.
shed and actually put it as part of the pavilion, both the sheds, would that still count individually, or because they're
Contiguous roof line.
okay?
Yes. Perhaps the petitioner can explain their need for all of those,
Yep.
but we would count them as contiguous roof lines.
Okay.
So the existing attached garage is 1. The larger expanded attached garage is still 1.
All right, okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to double check that. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, if the petitioner is present, please come forward and state your case.
Good evening. I appreciate you guys having me today. Scott Staples, 2717 Ardmore, and at my age, I don't get to do too many things new again. This is kind of interesting to be used to something new, and I don't get nervous very often. I find myself nervous today, so forgive me and help me if there's anything that you'd like to ask that I don't get to on the first try. I appreciate what we can do. Our goal has always been to fit into the neighborhood and to make it better along the way. Before I do get started, I do want to definitely thank Mr. Borowski. He's been absolutely amazing in answering and any questions. This week I had 2 questions that he answered within 5 minutes, both of them, and gave me an example to be able to explain something I didn't understand. And the rest of the staff that I've had a chance to work with has been equally great, and I really appreciate that you guys give your time to be here. And so that's been my favorite part of this is getting to see the people that work with our city, and they're working hard and doing good job on all of our behalfs. Excuse me. So as noted, we recently purchased this structure. The neighbor's property, she passed away unexpectedly, and the goal was not to have houses on top of each other, as we've just heard. And that's when I started learning how many rules that Royal Oak has. I bragged for a long time that I don't have an HOA and made fun of a number of my friends who do, and now I've realized why we don't need an HOA, because the rules are embedded in code. So you'll notice as City Council shared, there's a number of things that had I known that we may have looked to do different things. So today, as I go through, when you guys get to questions, if there's something that we can change to make it permissible for you guys, or if you want to add a restriction, we're happy to consider that and try to make that happen. When we first bought the property, the plan was to keep the existing detached garage and knock down the house. And that's when I learned firsthand how much fun that wasn't. You can't have an accessory structure without a primary structure. So you couldn't knock down the house, and I couldn't combine it until the house was knocked over. But if you could magically combine the properties, then it would have been allowed to have that auxiliary structure. But the number of rules kept getting in the way. The second use that we looked at was potentially putting a tiny house on the property, and along with a pool. And that's when I learned about the 1,000 square foot minimum, and that didn't work. We looked at a number of different possibilities, and what turns out is just about anything that we do to improve the now combined property, and the city attorney's information was correct at the time of filing that combining the lots is now complete. So it is a single address now. And you said the address was Girard. I don't know that it matters, but it's Ardmore. So first, I feel like I'm in front of YouTube stars. I've watched a lot of your show. Really appreciate that you guys put it on once a month for us, and really notice that one of the things that you seem to ask everybody is what the neighbors thought. And so you saw I submitted a letter that we dropped off at all of our neighbors that were in the 300-foot, which turns out to be quite a few. I think there's 45 homes within 300 feet of the new combined property. I had no idea that I had that many close neighbors. I have petitions with signatures. Who do I give that to?
You can give it to Mr. Moore at the end, and he'll pass them down.
I'll start. I'm the lucky one. Thank you.
So of the 45 homes, everybody that I visited to talk about it was in favor of it. There was one that said he was in favor of it, but he didn't want to sign. So I didn't have that. And there's other people that either text me or called and were in support of it. But everybody I talked to, and I imagine that there's going to be someone that speaks after me that's not, because I've never seen a case come up here where everybody was in favor of it. But the signatures represent 71% of the of the folks that are in that 300-foot area. So there's 29 signatures on there. And then, as was read off, and I apologize if you got tired, there ended up being 8 variances when I filed. If you look at my narrative, it talks to the fact that I thought that there was 2 variances that I needed to do this work, and so all of these, a number of these were again a learning experience for me, and that's why if there's things that I can do to make it proper so that we can build on this property that we now have, and if combined, would be much appreciative. The non-conforming structure piece, let me come back to that one as the last one. The waiving of 587 square feet of the allowable 3,500 square feet. The reason for needing to be over that, it's an existing home. You can't just add an arbitrary number of square feet, make it stay in the style of the area and in the style of the home. So trying to come up with different ways that could give us additional use out of the property and stay in that square feet, we did not have a good way to do that. And we feel that necessitated requesting that variance from you guys. Waiving 21 feet from the minimum setback required of the 33 feet. So again, I'm not an attorney, so correct me where I go astray, but my understanding is that rule is saying that the setback is 25 feet, whatever's greater of 25 feet or the average of the properties on either side. When we knocked down the neighbor's house, that now made the house 3 over the adjacent property, and the property on the other side, which would be closer, I believe it's inside of the 25 feet, it would not, and they're actually here today in support of this for us, isn't used. So it's basically because one house is set back to that 31 feet that wasn't in play before I knocked down the house, is now setting the setback for us, and so that was unintentional. Waive 614 square feet of the 800 accessory. The idea there is to be able to have a pool pavilion and be able to have storage for it. I had no idea that we had a max storage, and actually it was incredible to go and meet as many neighbors as I got to meet and hear stories about the city. But the number one thing that I spent time explaining is what the variances were. Almost everybody said, "Are you kidding me? You need a variance to do this? You're making the neighborhood look nicer. It's your property." And I said, I worked in a highly regulated industry, and I explained to them how governments work, and you won't hear me complain about the rule. I heard you say that you guys don't make them. That'll be a different area where I make those complaints. And I appreciate the work that you guys do here. Waive 13 feet from the maximum 25-foot residential driveway. The plan was to be pavers for the additional driveway, and I think the drawing did not show that properly. So at the property line, the thought would be that, assuming that I can do that without breaking a different rule, because I know every garage will need a driveway, the idea that it would curtail into the same size that it is now at the property line. 2 of the maximum allowable structures. Mr. O'Fack, I think you hit the nail on the head. We'd be happy to get rid of the 2 existing sheds and add it to the storage of the pavilion. And then the other thing that Mr. Bohorski had asked me for when he was asking for details of the pool pavilion is what kind of roof it was, and I told him it was not a pergola roof. If that made a difference to go to a pergola roof, and specifically they have ones that can motorized move, that would be an option that we would be happy to go to as well. As far as hang on. The 4 rules, I listed them in my narrative and why we think that all 4 of them apply. Restrictions prevent the owner from using the property in permitted purposes. There's almost no additional building that I can do on this property. If it's 2 properties, you'd have a lot more use by combining them. It severely limits it, as the city attorney said, as a percentage of the lot. It still is, it is not going to be overly big-footed on the property. Our goal is to make our home, hopefully my older generations of my family aren't watching this, but the goal is eventually that we will be a multi-generational home. We have had my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law living with us at different times, and they're in their advanced age are likely going to need full-time care at some point, and we expect one, if not more of them, to be living with us. And so the idea is to, with this, to actually build a second master bedroom, expand the kitchen underneath it in anticipation of that. In fact, my adult daughter at 28 has moved back in with us as well, so I guess technically we are a multi-generational house already. Plight of the landowner is due to unique circumstances of the property. I think this board has talked a number of times about pool houses not being specifically called out in the variances. I think almost everything that we're looking, the variances didn't, the codes did not anticipate, and so there aren't codes really covering them, and the ones that are were made for other reasons. The alleged hardship has not been created by any person. The hardship to those variances that weren't made for the uses that weren't envisioned at the time were not the cause of us, obviously. So that would take us back to the first one of altering and expanding a non-conforming structure. Now that comes back down to the shed, which I think we would be willing to take options there that you guys could see fit. And then the offset. For the offset, assuming that the variance in as is would be preferable, but if that holds and you guys are unwilling to waiver on that, to share a waiver on that, the offset, I'm sorry, the goal would be to not build you don't want to extend something that's already non-conforming, sorry, as combining two of them there. So the only way that I could see of doing that would be to set the additional size of the garage, to actually set that back and skew the house to look kind of like a Tetris block. I don't think that's, and my neighbors that are here can definitely speak to if they think that would be helpful to their properties and their view as they go down the street. My guess would be no. And then the last one is the variance about the garage not being able to stick out more than 9 feet beyond the edge of the living space on the first floor. Thank you, Mr. Rohowski, for explaining that one to me. I read it, my builder read it, my architect read it, and we all came up with different interpretations of what that meant. That one was a complete shock to me. I had no idea that we were non-compliant to begin with. And so the only solution I could come up with on that, well, two solutions I could come up with that. One, again, take the additional garage, move that around to the side of the house, separating the garages, which again creates a poor aesthetic. Or the other thing would be that the part of the addition that we could expand the addition to have living space come out closer to the garage space to be within 7 feet of that. That would require, I'd probably need another 130 square feet of variance on the total square footage to be able to make that happen. But I can show anyone who's interested on the plan where we might be able to make that happen if that was desirable of the board. I'll be in trouble because my wife will watch this. She's apologized for not being able to make it. It is open house at the school she teaches at tonight, and she was unable to make it.
That's fine. Is there any questions for the petitioners? Yes, Mr. Moore.
So you said that you're willing to work with the number of accessory buildings. Are you officially withdrawing the request for 2 additional accessory buildings?
I would. The best would be as submitted. If you guys would say that if you guys want to alter it, I'd be happy to. I want to figure out a way to make it work. My son is going to be a senior this year. Well, already is a senior this year, and we have a graduation party next summer. And if I have construction going on that, I will not continue to be married.
We can't alter, we can't alter your plan for you. I mean, it's ultimately your decision. You can maybe listen to some of our feedback or some of the comments from the neighbors.
Then with that understanding, I thought you guys could make changes to it or make conditions. But then with that, absolutely. Let's assume that there's 3 storage spaces right now. One's attached to the pool pavilion, and then 2 standalones. The 2 sheds right now are not fixated to anything, so I didn't even realize that they fell under building requirements. In fact, they've recently, I was able to move them. They just slide around. They're not permanently affixed. So if that would make the board happier with it, we're absolutely happy to remove the 2 that are behind the basketball net. We would ask to keep the total square footage of the auxiliary building the same, and we would expand the area off the pool pavilion for storage of equal size.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for what makes the whole board happy, but you do have quite a list of requested variances, and so if there were things that...
8. I hadn't seen anyone with 8 before. I got to get an award for that, right?
No, there's been 9 or 10 before, don't worry.
I don't know what our record is, but...
I really did.
All right, fair enough, thanks.
Mr. Clapp, I think I saw a hand over there.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I also appreciate you reaching out to your neighbors too. That's a lot of signatures, so thanks for doing that homework. And then too, your write-up was great too. Thanks for submitting the practical difficulty statement. It's rare we get those, so it's helpful to hear your side of things. But you're right, it's a lot. You said you thought 2, but there's 8. So we're always trying to, is there a way to reduce some of those to some degree? And the one thing that sticks out to me is the garage. 3-car is tough in Royal Oak, and 4-car is almost unheard of. So, a 3-car would also help cut down the driveway, might also help that 2-foot reduction. Is that something you considered too?
I absolutely did. And the original thought of the additional garage space is that I do projects at home, woodworking and different things, and my wife would much prefer that they be done in an area that is not tracking anything through the house. So the idea of that space would be that we'd use 1 car of it, and the other piece would be a workshop. Again, the original thought when we bought the neighbor house was that we could keep the auxiliary structure, and that was a 2-car garage. So we're trying to recoup that. I do realize that it's fairly unique, and I don't know that I found any place where you guys had recommended that. The other, so if the driveway tapers at the street, I think that gets potentially, unless I'm missing a different part of it, would get rid of the 1 variance that would be required for the driveway width. The other possibility, if that doesn't do it, would require a different variance, which would be a circular driveway, and then it wouldn't be that wide. But now Royal Oak, that would require a different variance.
Okay, thank you.
I think I saw Mr. Reddy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of did.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess I just wanted to say I'm going to have some difficulty with the fact that this was a lot created to build this design, and it's still coming with now 7 variance requests. I'm going to have trouble believing that a lesser relaxation can't provide you some relief. So I just want to give you another chance to say why 7 variances are the least we can do.
Part of the process of Royal Oak. So and you guys, this is probably obvious to you guys that work in building industry. I'm a computer guy. The idea, I came in and said, okay, can we talk about what could work, what can't work? And that's not an option. It's tell us everything that you want, put it on a sheet of paper, and then we'll talk about it in this space. My architect and builder are not building a lot in Royal Oak area. They've done a little bit, but very small additions and stuff. And every time they heard about one of these, we're absolutely surprised. The regulations that we have here, and most of these are friends from when I grew up on the east side in Sterling Heights, are they're actually, everybody working on the building is all connected through my high school architecture teacher. So people that are builders and architects that he trained. In fact, my architect replaced him as a teacher and has since retired. So it's kind of a cool group that's working on it. We had no idea that we were had this many variances. If you look at the petition, I put the 2 variances on there expecting that that's what it was. I work in a regulated industry, so I'm used to reading tariff language. I read through all the code, and I did not realize those ones applied. Some of them, even after I was told that I was in violation, 3 of us, 2 being in the industry, weren't able to agree on what they were trying to prohibit.
Other questions?
Oh,
sorry.
Do you understand now?
I've come to understand, and that's why I said if you guys, and I don't know, but help me out with the process. I'm absolutely happy. My goal is to come out of here with something that I can start the building process on. If that's not everything that I have asked for, I understand that could be part of the process, and I want to be flexible. That being said, the best solution for me is having all of it, but. And I'm not sure which would make sense to adjust for you. Are you talking about the auxiliary structure square feet?
And to be honest with you, I'm talking about everything. So.
Well, if I get rid of everything, there's nothing I can do on the property that doesn't help me.
Right, the difficulty I have is that you added another lot that had an existing house and combined them and are now saying that there's something unique about this lot that is requiring these variances. So that's the issue I'm having. Like, you created the lot, and now you're saying that there's a unique problem with the lot you created. That's my issue.
I appreciate that. And removing any of the variances doesn't change that, correct? I'm going to try to figure out a way that I can help.
I'm sorry, I just can't tell you safely what is zero.
I think I saw Mr. Gavin and then Mr. Collette, maybe.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm just trying to think of a way to say this. We've got 9 different people up here that have different opinions and different approaches as to how we view all these things. You know, there's a couple lawyers up here, a couple architects, you know, other people from other industries. So it's all, everybody's coming at it from different angles. And, you know, in my personal opinion, in looking at this, like, there are a number of these that are just, you know, I'm fine with. They just kind of go along with the nature of expanding a house, you know, altering and expanding a non-conforming structure, things like that. But, like, everybody's going to have a different take on it. So from our perspective, nobody up here can give you specifics on how you can alter your plans. You're going to have to kind of take a read of the room.
I'm comfortable with that.
And decide
Absolutely.
that. I will say in the past, when people have decided that they wanted to tweak things, because we can't tell you, and I don't want to make your architect, you know, often when people come here, they have an architect with them. If there's a reason to tweak the design so that it seems more likely to pass, sometimes we have granted and tabled the voting on it. You know, we have everybody here tonight, so it's not an option to table it because we're missing somebody, but we have done that in the past. I can't guarantee that it's going to happen tonight. It requires a vote of the board, but that way you could take it back to your architect and tweak things and bring them back. But you're going to have to make a judgment call based on people's, you know, input and feedback. And, you know, I know we have the one letter from, you know, I have the things that I'm concerned about, but this is also a public hearing because we want to hear what the neighbors have to say. And if there are any other, you know, people that want to comment on it, I want to hear if there is any comment so that I know what their issues are. But I will say for myself personally, I really appreciated that you did the polling of your neighbors and that they are good with what I view as 2 of the biggest variances, which is the square footage variances. But I agree with Mr. Klatt. The thing that gives me the greatest pause is the width of the garage, which it would address 2, possibly even 3 variances, you know, or at least shrink them. Because when people bring us this number, it gives us pause, and people get reluctant to approve this many variances. So one of the things we like to try and do is reduce the number of variances so it's more in conformance. So just kind of giving you all that, that's my view on the feedback here.
Honestly, that's very helpful to me. Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, and I'll give you my feedback too of what's on my mind is your garage and accessory buildings are causing a lot of this. You know, having a 4-car garage and also a pool building. I mean, I think it's probably something that you need to decide, like what you can live with versus, you know, what you want, because the space of the accessory structures and the garage and everything combined is really what's on my mind as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the information. Now, can you guys, if that pool building was a pergola instead of an actual roof, does that still count as square feet of a accessory building?
Mr. Murphy?
We regard anything that has a complete roof line as a counted towards the square footage. So if it didn't have a complete roof line, then we wouldn't. But the board hasn't given any indication,
right.
so
And
that's the hesitation.
Yep, no, I understand the hesitation. I think he's trying to figure out if pergola means complete roof line or not.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it might be wise to hold a public hearing.
Yeah, well, there's a couple more questions, but I think, Mr. Wolf, you had your hand.
Yeah, I agree really well with Mr. Garvin's point where we all have different opinions. I'm an urban planner myself for a different jurisdiction, so, you know, the way I see things in my professional life and here are going to be very different. I guess the point I'm trying to say and the question I want you to ask for yourself is this is not a wish list. And so I would want to ask you, what are the things that, if you were to be completely denied, how would you come back here a second time? Because for me, I don't know what the practical difficulty is based on what my colleague, Mr. Reddy said, since this was self-created because you combine the lot. For me, there is no practical difficulty there. That is not self-caused. It's not like, for example, let's just say you had a stream running through your house or something like that, or your property. Maybe that's a practical difficulty then. But for me, the question I want you to ask yourself and your family and your builder is what is the practical difficulty now that I've combined the lots? Because for me, once you bought the house and demolished it, for me, that's self-caused. So that's the question I want you to ask yourself. I can't tell you what to do.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That would have, so the changes that you're, anyways, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Sukin?
I'm not sure what you were saying about your driveway.
So my understanding, and it could be a misinterpretation of what they said, it's that the width of the driveway is measured at the property line. So if the driveway tapers in there, it's measured at the property line, not the maximum width above that, or did I misunderstand that code?
Okay, so you're saying you're not going to bring the driveway for the new garage out to the street? You're going to taper it off into the existing one? And how wide is the existing one?
15 feet, I believe.
Well, he can go up to 25 if he wanted
Right.
to. Okay. Mr. Gavin?
Yeah, just a little clarification, because you did mention pavers there, so I got a little, that's what confused me too, and I'm glad Ms. Zukin brought that back up.
So right now, I've been able to put pavers on, and it gives the illusion that the driveway's bigger because of that, so I had not realized that pavers can either be the driveway or not be the driveway, and they're treated differently, so that was my confusion.
Okay, all right, thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Moore?
So you're saying you're going to taper the driveway so that it's not more than 25 feet at the property line, but that's not how you've submitted your request, right? Because I'm seeing that you're asking for 13, which is the 38.
So, so the people that designed the pool drew that in there, and you guys measured it from the drawing. I had missed that they made it double, that they doubled the length of it. So the construction technique that I was planning is that the existing driveway would be the only concrete, and then I'd taper from that with paver blocks to provide the entrance into the second bay.
So is that another one you're taking off the list then? I just want to be clear on really what you're asking for here.
And it goes into my understanding of the code. Yes, I could take that off then. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Questions? I've got one for you, Mr. Murphy. I think I know the answer. I just want to make sure. I know right now he's got that potential additional garage with the double door. If that was a single door, would that then cause that to be under the 50%? Or is it because that whole portion there?
Any garage floor area
Okay, thank you.
would count towards the calculation. So if the garage addition was narrowed from 2 bays or two vehicles wide to 1, then arguably, yes, it would bring it below 50%.
Sorry, I meant more like if it was actually more of an L shape where you had one car and then he had a space off to the side, so he still had his workspace.
If it's accessory floor area, we count it towards the calculation.
That's what I wanted to double check on that.
And I did not mention it, but the solution for the 7 feet that the garage sticks out. Oops, sorry. If the additional 130 square feet, if we made livable space and brought that out to make sure that we hit the 7 feet off of the edge of the garage, that would make it wider, and I think that gets it under the 50%.
Okay. Mr. Langweber.
With all due respect, you're asking, we're kind of throwing ideas out of what might work, what might not work, and it's going to involve, I think, a wholesale redo of your plans in order to show us what it is you're intending to do. Because to ask us to approve something with all these conditions on it is just going to be not really workable for you or for us, frankly. So I'm not sure what your next step would be, but you may want to consider some option with postponement or resubmittal at some date where you might want to address much of these things.
Okay. Mr. Murphy.
I think the next appropriate step, as you are a quasi-judicial body, you take all the facts that are presented and you also do take public input. I think an appropriate step now would be to solicit public comment.
All right. No final questions for the petitioner? All right. We'll take public comment and then we'll ask you about what you want us to do afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Good evening. Leo Duval. I live at 2806 Ardmore, right across the street from Scott and Julie. First, I applaud them for tearing down Mrs. Jenkins' house. It was not livable, and we were always scared that Mrs. Jenkins was going to get hurt or die in the house. Unfortunately, that's what happened. I know he jumped into tearing it down and having all these great ideas, but I also would like you guys to go look at his house, which was built in 2004, and the homes that are being built today. His is quality, and the other ones are quantity. His looks great. It fits in the neighborhood. It's old looking. It's brick, stone. It looks very well. It looks good with the neighborhood and that. And so obviously I do approve everything that he wants to do. I do understand the 4-car garage, the 2 doors on each side. But with the lot as big as it is and what it will look to with the house design and that, I think it would fit fine with what I looked at and knowing what he's been doing with the neighborhood and the block and with the lot right now. When he took the house down, he immediately filled the hole, seeded it, and you wouldn't even know that there was a house there. So I know Scott and Julie's heart is in the right direction and wants it to make it look good for the neighborhood. So that's why I think that we need to accept some of the variances. The sheds, yeah, we can do something with the sheds, because he and I talked about them. I said, they're going to say something about that. And of course, it did happen there and that. Nice kitchen, the addition, the 1,200 square feet to the house, I think it's perfect for the neighborhood and that. We all have large lots. So it's not like it's going to be all lot, Bigfoot, and you're not going to see grass in that, because it's going to fit the neighborhood in that. So I definitely approve all the look of the house and everything. So thank you.
Anyone else to speak on this case, please come forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Corla. I live at 535 Girard Avenue, the corner just next to Scott and Julie Staples. I just wanted to attest to Scott and Julie Staples are the best neighbors that we could ever have. I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, and being a neighborly person wasn't really always something you came around to too often. And Scott and Julie were the first ones to introduce themselves to us. They've always been open-hearted to us. They've treated us well with respect. And it would be great to see, some help to them. Commenting on the house that was there before, it was severely dilapidated. What Scott and Julie did in tearing down that house was truly, a good thing for our neighborhood and really helped the appearance of the neighborhood overall. He used to live over on Vermont Avenue, so he's been in the Red Run neighborhood, pretty much the last, 30 years or so. So he's well acquainted to the neighborhood, and he's always had the best interest in the neighborhood. The house that was there before, that Geneva had lived in, she was unable to maintain the yard and keep up with the house due to her old age. Scott actually, paid for lawn service for her. He's always had the best interest in the neighborhood to make sure that he's keeping up with the appearance. So he's always had, a good head on his shoulders for what's in the best interest of our neighborhood. And I really appreciate everything he's done so far to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Kelly Corla. I am his wife. I also live at 535 Girard, which is directly south of Scott's house. I completely agree with everything Jeff said. They're just fantastic neighbors, all of them. Their daughter watched our cat. We trust them. They're great people. We couldn't have asked for better neighbors. I wanted to address a couple of the different points for the variance. This one might not be relevant anymore, but I know they laid out that chart of 4 structures. I think 4 structures looks a lot on paper there. Those 2 sheds, excuse me, they're really small. You can't see them. They're really out of the way. I know that probably doesn't matter if you dropped it, but they're really not a big deal to us. I like the idea of having less cars on the street, and that is what his idea proposes. For us, it's really hard to back out of our driveway. We've got some bushes that restrict the area, so it's a very slow back out. We've got a lot of cars around the area, so it's just a lot going on when I'm backing out of my driveway. So I think that would just get more cars off of the street and open that up. I guess in terms of the variant on the distance, I think it's to the sidewalk, like how close you can be. Our house, I don't know if I should say this, but our house is definitely violating that. We're very close to the sidewalk. It's an old house, so I hope that's okay. But we're very close to the sidewalk, so I don't think Scott's proposal to bring it forward, he's going nowhere near as close as we are. So I don't think that it would look odd because our house is kind of the one that's already forward. I guess in terms of, in general, I think it's important to note that north of Scott's house, there is, I don't know the facts here, but there's another house. It's very small. I don't know if that's 2 lots or not. It looks like it could be 2 lots, and then there was Geneva's house and then Scott's house. And Jeff and I guess our fear was that Geneva's house, someone would build a house, and then the other house next to it, they would split it up into 2 lots. So that you'd have a bunch of houses on top of each other, very similar to the one you just turned down. So that's what we were worried about and we didn't want to happen. And Scott purchasing the land next to his house really prevents that from happening and gives the appearance of, I think, more space around the neighborhood. Specifically, the pool is low, so it just kind of makes it have a more open feel So I guess in summary, there is this, we didn't want 3 houses built, and this would prevent doing that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, 3 times. So before we proceed, as you've heard, there's a lot of concerns we have. You could potentially request that we delay this 1 month, that you go talk to your architect. I understand it'll put your schedule on delay, or you could risk whatever we decide right here, which may or may not be in what your favor. So I just wanted to let you know to help you out.
You guys have been absolutely more than fair. I appreciate the advice. The piece that I'm struggling with is I know that I can't get rid of all the variances and still be able to make use of this. And I know you guys can't tell me, but it's a really weird spot to be in to know what would be acceptable. We've drawn this a number of times. Like you said, like I shared in the beginning, I've gone through a number of different permutations trying to make use of this. I get that it's a large number of variances, but I don't think it's a large, if any, departure from the city. So,
Okay.
so if, I guess I appreciate your guys' mercy, and let's keep it the way it is right now, if
All right,
you're okay with
so
that.
we will bring it to this side of the board and have some discussion on these. Yes, Mr. Reddy.
Was the number of accessory buildings removed, or?
Yes, we should confirm 2 things that I think I heard you say, just to confirm. One, you were willing to waive variance, Part H, which is waive 2 of the maximum allowable accessory. Okay, so that one's off. And you were willing also to do G, which is waive 13 feet of the driveway and have it just 25 feet for the width.
That is correct.
Okay, so yes, we are down to, Mr. Moore.
Would it be best for any motion to just deny those 2, or are we asking him to withdraw? Because I think
I'm happy to withdraw.
Okay.
I have no problem with it. I mean, I don't know what you need from
Mr.
me.
Murphy, if you're okay with that, or?
Either of those options is appropriate.
Okay.
A withdrawal is perfectly understandable. Expressing it that way not only makes it clear to the petitioner, but anyone observing.
Okay.
So yeah, it's clear to me that, Mr. O'Feck, the 2 variances that you said, I'd like to withdraw those from my request.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, discussion and or motions on this side of the table. And that's fine if you want to go one at a time versus, yes, Mr. Gavin.
I'm going to do the 2 lowest hanging fruit ones first.
Okay. Sounds good.
A and C. Alter and expand a non-conforming structure and waive 2.1 feet from the minimum required 33-foot east front yard setback. Sorry, there we go.
And it looks like Mr. Moore has seconded yours. He beat you to it, Mr. Gavin. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
So with those, I think it meets our factors on those. I think this is, an expansion of that would unreasonably prevent him, applying those rules would unreasonably prevent him from expanding. And it makes complete sense to do it in line with, his current front facade. The variance will do substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners in the district, which we have heard from both, and they agree. A lesser relaxation would not give substantial relief. Those are kind of take it or leave it, certainly on the non-conforming structure. And then I think a lesser relaxation on the front yard setback would be detrimental. And then plight of landowners due to unique circumstances of the property. It's a non-conforming structure, and it's the front yard setback is what it is. And then the hardship has not been created by any person presently having any interest in the property. I know some other board members have a different view on that, but I do agree with the view that that is meant to more, go after people that are violating the ordinance and then asking for forgiveness. So I don't see that as being a problem here, because he's asking for a variance in advance rather than doing it the other way around. So for those 2, I see no problem with them.
Okay. Mr. Moore, anything to add?
Just a quick question. Would you consider adding D in there? Because D is already existing as well. I mean, the garage is already sticking
you're
out.
right, you're right.
So
I will amend my motion to do that, and I think all my previous analysis applies to D as well. So
Okay.
I will amend the motion to add D.
I still second.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Mr. Moore?
No.
Okay. Any other comments regarding this motion as seen? Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, no, once I started putting everything together, I think Mr. Gavin's idea to break this apart makes a lot more sense. So yeah, no problem with A or C. D, I'm a little bit unsure of, but I think I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. It sounds like you're doing everything the right way. You're trying to do it the right way. So I guess, yeah, so I'll vote in favor of those for now, but I do have other questions later.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I too will be in favor of this. I think you stated it well. Existing stuff, can't help it if you're just trying to do whatever you want to your house. It's existing. So therefore, I have no problem with going along with the motion as. If there's no other comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor signify by, this is for A, C, and D to be granted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, those three all pass. So that leaves us with B, F, and E. And B and F are pretty much tied together in a way because, as I see, it's Mr. Gavin. I think you beat Mr. Wolf.
Oh, no, sorry. If you
No, go for it.
I don't want to dominate the conversation. If I move to, I think I'm going to kind of break these apart and do the usable floor area, and then we'll handle the garage separately.
Okay.
So we'll do B for now. Yeah. So I move to approve variance B, waive 587 square feet of the maximum allowable 3,500 square feet of usable floor area.
Mr. Moore seconds. Also, go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
So a lot of those same points I made earlier apply. Just to kind of address some additional things. This is a kind of a case of a large lot again, which I know is a frequent issue with us. It's not technically in the large lot district. And I know that the maximum lot coverage is not really an issue here because it's meeting those requirements right now. But with that, I view this as being a relatively minor overage given the size of the lot and the intended construction here, as well as the petition being circulated with all those neighbors in favor of it. I know that only covered 2 of the variances, but it was the square footage variances, both for usable floor area and for maximum accessory floor area. So with that being said, I'm in favor of that for the usable floor area. So I think it meets all of our requirements.
Okay. Mr. Moore, anything to add?
No, that handled it. Thanks.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Reddy, and then Mr. Wolf.
This one I'll be opposed to. I don't see the practical difficulty here. I know the petitioner would like to have more space, but I don't see the practical difficulty. And the fact that this is now a large lot is because the petitioner combined the lots and demolished the other home. So that's why I'll be opposed.
Okay. Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Reddy couldn't have said it better. Mr. Reddy said everything that he wanted to, that I was going to say, so I too will be voting against this one.
No problem. Other comments? Ms. Zukin.
I'll just mention that I do agree with Mr. Reddy. I think that the addition can be built within the limitations. And what I hear from all your neighbors, you're a wonderful person, as is your wife, and you did great by tearing down that house. But I think you can still build within the city requirements.
Other comments? Well, torn, but I am in favor of this one because If you go by this, and this is why I think actually F is sort of tied to this, because that's waiving 614 of the allowable accessory ground floor area, which includes the 2-car garage that's being added, as well as the pool. The pool, if you include the 2 storage things get added into that, would be 511 square feet. So 511 square feet of that 587 is basically the pool and those sheds that he's trying to hold on to. So being just a little bit over the 3,500 square feet, I don't have a problem necessarily with that. And I know it wouldn't even be close if it wasn't for the 614 feet, of which, again, 511 is of that. So that means 100 feet of that is the garage of going over to be that amount. And maybe I'm doing my math wrong, but that's how I'm coming up with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the math, but I thought the garage is
Floor
totally
area.
separate
Yeah.
from the house
This is
square
floor
footage.
area.
The accessory.
Yeah, that's different. Floor area.
Maybe I'm doing myself, Mr. Murphy?
Garage
Is that
separate.
correct?
No. 35, the variance from B specifically relates to residential usable
thank you.
floor area.
Sorry, my mistake. I was confusing myself. Long night already. All right, I rescind what I was talking about. Any other discussion? Yes, Ms. Robinson.
We're just looking at B right now, is that correct?
Yes, just
Okay.
B. Were you going to say anything?
I will be in favor of the.
Okay, you'll be in favor. Mr. Clapp, was that a hand?
Nope, ready to vote.
All right. Yeah, I'm still torn because this is a larger lot. Yes, they can create it itself. Yes, Ms.
I can add to what
Yes.
just the reason I'm in favor. This, and I'm looking at it from the neighborhood too. This is kind of, to me, kind of a traditional transitional neighborhood. Things are changing in there. And at first I thought I was against it. It was like, wait, so I was really torn about that. But the more I look at this and the more I look at the neighborhood, that's why I'm saying this does fit in here. I mean, the only thing I'm saying, the alleged hardship has not been created by any other person by any person presently having an interest because he had a smaller lot and now he's adding to the bigger lot. That's the part that I'm torn about, but it does, in my opinion, go with the neighborhood.
So the hardship is more the neighborhood is
Yeah.
changing and making it more to compare with that. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. I actually used to live in this neighborhood, so I'm very familiar with the property. And there are a lot of new, larger homes in the area and very small ranches that have been there from the 50s. It's a very mix of different things, and it's just how the neighborhood is transitioning. And I don't think that this will be out of character, especially with some of the other homes that are right around the corner. So.
Mr. Leinweber.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be in support of this item. I applaud the multi-generational aspect of planning for homes and the combination of the lot. You know, the petitioner could have certainly built, something else on that lot, but by combining it, he's, I think, adding, an asset for the neighborhood. And at this, the square footage that I think that he's asking for is not unreasonable. So I'll be in support.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I think we're ready for vote on this one. So all those in favor of waiving 587 square feet of allowable square footage, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. That motion carries. So that leaves us with E and F now. Okay. Who wants to take a crack at that one? Mr. Wolf raised his hand, so he will take the crack.
I'm going to unfortunately be Dr. No and vote to deny, or make a motion to deny number F there, the 614 square feet.
Okay. Is there a second to that one? Second. Mr. Langweber. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
I'm going to just repeat what I said before. I don't see what the practical difficulty is because this was self-created The hard part for me about supporting this is even if you were to subtract the 2 additional sheds, so I'm not going to do that math in my head, but let's just call it 126 feet plus, what is that? 1414 minus 126 is still about, let's call it 1,300 square feet. We're just going to make the math real easy. That's still a lot for a lot that was created by the applicant's own work. Again, I'm not. It sounds like you're a really great guy that cares about his neighborhood, but when you're asking for almost double the accessory, double the variance, that just gives me pause of what you want to do. And again, it sounds like a great idea, but we have to think about where we can bend the rules.
Mr. Lineweber?
Yeah, I think the site plan needs some tweaking, perhaps, to make the accessory ground area square footage more efficient. And I think as it stands right now, as far as the numbers go, we haven't, we took the number of accessory buildings off, but the square footage remains, and I think that needs to be updated. So as it stands now, I'm going to be supporting the motion to reject.
Okay. Other comments? Mrs. Robinson? And then Mr.
We're
Tuck.
talking about both E and F?
Just F.
Just F, okay. No.
Okay. Mr. Klatt?
You had a question for Mr. Murphy. So if we deny F tonight, the applicant still could come back with a lesser request, different application, lesser request, if he chose to?
If we're being generous, yes, but it's a difficult sell.
Mr. Gavin?
I'm going to be opposed to the motion to a couple of reasons. One, the big chunk of this is the additional square footage is the pool pavilion, and that's something I feel like this board has struggled with over the past few years, which is, those additions of outdoor covered patios, pool pavilions, etc. Sometimes it feels okay, sometimes it doesn't. In this instance, I feel like it's okay. The overall, because it's such a large lot, the overall total square foot percentage coverage it's still relatively low, 7.5%. So it's not inconsistent with the size of the lot, and along with that, the neighbors are in favor of it. So I feel like it's something that we're not exactly set up for with our existing ordinances, so which is why we struggle with it. I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of having that extra square footage for the pool pavilion. So yeah, that coupled with the fact of the size of the lot, and along with, I don't know that I'll just come out and say it, I am opposed to the variance E, I believe it is, the 5.6 for the total width of the front facade for the garage. So I think that will kind of take care of some of that extra square footage there as well, in addition to that. So that's the approach I'm taking with it. So I'm fine with the overall square footage. It's just the frontage that's a problem for me. So I'm going to be opposed to this one.
Mr. Moore and then Mr. Klatt. I didn't know if any.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this one too. I mean, I think the sheds coming off takes off some of that. I think there's going to be some hesitation on E, so that'll also reduce probably the second car of the additional 2-car garage, depending on how they work that out. So I think that I'm fine with F because it will come down naturally just with the changes that will be required
Next, Mr. Clapp.
No, I agree with the previous two comments. I think cutting the sheds out, that's 123 square feet. But again, same thing. I'm okay with F, but E's the challenge because it's just very garage dominant. We want the facade to be more house versus garage. So cutting that down to maybe 3 bays, but still giving the square footage for the workshop or whatever you need in there would be helpful. So I'm okay with F, just not E. Same thing Mr. Gavin said.
Okay. Ms. Zukin, and then I think over here, Mr. Ray.
Well, I have a problem with this because we don't know how much the garage is going to be cut down. And the garage itself is already in excess of the 800 square feet. So I don't think I think I will be supporting the motion to deny because there's just, we have a lot of large lot homes that are in large lot neighborhoods. This is not a large lot neighborhood. I love the fact that there'll be more green there, but it's just too much house, too much garage, and I can't approve over 800 square feet at this point.
Okay. Mr. Reddy, and then we'll come back this way.
So I'll be in support of the motion. I'm struggling to see the practical difficulty in not having a pool and pool pavilion. And what I would just say is if this motion fails and there's a counter motion to approve, maybe that motion can be made for a lesser amount of square feet, since it seems to be predicated on the idea that it's not going to require as large a variance anyway.
Okay. And then Mr. Moore?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else on comments on this? Well, assuming and we shouldn't assume one way or another, but if we did deny E, the 5.6, if I did the calculations right, that shrinks it down about 6 feet. With that means you lose about 120 square feet. So 120 square feet makes that about 500, which is approximately, like I said, the pavilion of the pool with the sheds in it. So I'm torn on this one because of that. Because you're right, we don't really have anything in here about the pools in having the structures, how more people want to build pools now, and the accessories associated with those. So just at least the equipment alone, taking care of that. So I can understand, well, that's a sort of a hardship in that manner. So I'm torn on this one. Anyone else? Comments?
Repeat again what motion that we're working on.
It would be to deny waiving, deny F.
Just F.
Just
Okay.
F. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, okay, seeing none, we'll go to voting. All those in favor of denying waiving 614 of the maximum allowable accessory ground floor area, please signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So the motion fails. So is there a counter motion then? Or is there a motion to do E? Mr. Moore, I saw your hand.
Can I ask a question? With what we've approved here already, can the petitioner ask to postpone a decision on the other two and come back at risk of not being able to bring a new plan forward?
I think that the board has been very generous in their conversation with the petitioner, the number of times that you've offered him the opportunity to step back and reconsider his drawings. He has clearly expressed that he does not want to do that.
Okay.
So any motions right now? Mr. Gavin?
I feel like the board seems relatively set on this one, so I'll at least move to deny variance E.
Okay, is it
waiving 5.6.
Mr. Wolf seconds? Go ahead, Mr. Gatton.
I feel like it's been discussed enough. I don't need to add anything.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Wolf, anything to add?
Again, I just, again, for me, I don't see the hardship. I don't see the practical difficulty. I see that this was self-created and, you know, again, with these two alone, that's, for me, reason to deny it.
All right. Any other discussion? I will be in agreement of this one. This is definitely one that's clearly self-created because you can design without creating this need for 56% in a different manner. So because of that, I'm in favor of denying this variance. If there's no other discussion, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of denying E, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's none to oppose. So that leaves us with F. So that would mean... So F to decide whether or not we...
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Gavin?
I was going to move to approve.
Okay. And Mr. Moore seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Moore.
Okay,
We're
sorry.
getting confused on the letters now.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So now we're back to the 614 square feet. I feel like I've stated my piece on this, so we just had the vote to deny it, and that failed, and so I'm voting to approve it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Wolf, Mr. Reddy?
I'm going to agree with what my colleague Mr. Reddy said in a previous, when we talked about F in the previous time. I would be okay with maybe a lesser amount of excess of a lesser relief, but I think that this is, again, self-caused, self-created. As a result, there is no real practical difficulty. And again, because it's almost double what normally would be given, it's not, you know, a couple square feet here or there. So I'm going to vote against the motion.
Ms. Sukin?
I would just like to add that there's a lot of property here, and he can put more garage space somewhere else if we're granting the motion. And I still think that's too much garage space.
I just want to comment on that. I don't think he will be able to because doesn't the pool structure count as the one accessory
Yes.
structure, and then this garage is this second accessory structure? So he would need a variance for a third accessory structure because he can only have two. But anyway.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Langweber?
I think if the 614 square feet is based upon the plan as presented right now, if you take the two sheds away, the square footage stays the same. So you've got, if the narrative is correct, 128 square feet of those sheds, and that square footage could be in effect transferred over to somewhere else on the site. We've heard possibly connected to the pavilion, but that's part of the square. So the 614 includes that square footage. So if there was a reduction in the square footage, that's a different, I would have a different position. But as it stands right now, the 614 square feet includes the sheds.
It sounds like you're asking Mr. Gavin to make a friendly amendment to subtract 120 or 126 from the 614 as the variance to grant.
I think I'm going to leave it as it is. We can come back for a second vote if this fails. The petitioner did request to keep it, so it could get transferred.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem with that personally. So I'm not going to right now.
Okay, no problem. All right, any other comments? Now I'm torn because I wasn't thinking about that until Mr. Langweber said that, and now I'm thinking I might vote against this so I could get a reduced amount, because I agree on that portion. All right, if there's no other comments, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as it stands of granting the full variance, letter F, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion failed, so both have failed, so does anyone want to take a crack at a motion with a lesser variance on F? Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, wait, or,
Hold on.
right,
And that failed.
yeah.
And then there was a motion to approve the variance as requested by the petitioner, and it failed.
Yeah.
We're done.
Okay.
There was a majority voting in favor of the one variance, so it's been decided that he's not been given that variance request.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well then,
Does that address all the variance requests that were listed?
Yes.
Seems to be a little bit of a lull. Okay.
all right. We will move on to the next one, which is, where is it? Case number 240929.
Yes, the subject site is a corner lot.
Would like to take a biological break?
I was wondering about a short recess. It has been 2.5 hours.
Okay. We'll take a quick 5-minute break.
Thank you. I was going to say it's been a very contentious.
What? I don't understand.
We're not even halfway through, guys.
That was mine.
Mics are on. Oh.
All right, if everyone could get back ready, we'll get back into the swing of things. All right. All right, Ms. Robinson, are you ready? Sorry, caught you off guard. All right. Oh, that's okay. We're going to get back here. Case number 24-09-29, 627 East 11 Mile Road. I believe that's your case, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
The subject site's a corner lot. It's located on the north side of East 11 Mile Road. It has additional frontage along Mason Court, which runs north-south. And the property contains a single-story office building, which faces onto East 11 Mile Road, and there's also a two-story building in the back. Both of those are currently vacant. The site did have a fire, which severely damaged the northern building in the back. The southern building was luckily unscathed, but the petitioner is proposing to renovate this northern two-story building into a 4-unit multiple family building, and the southern building in the front will be retail. The site is located in the neighborhood business zoning district, which does not permit standalone multiple family buildings. So since the petitioner is planning to convert this building into one, a use variance would be required. As part of the review, staff also applied the multiple family zoning district provisions to this proposal. One such specific provision is that all multiple family buildings require a minimum 25-foot setback from all lot lines. This building would maintain the same non-conforming 5.6 west side yard setback and 3.7-foot north rear yard setback. So the petitioner needs additional variances to waive the 19.4 feet from the minimum required 25-foot setback for the side yard, and then to also waive the 21.3 feet from the minimum required 25-foot north rear yard setback. The zoning ordinance also specifies that there needs to be at least 20 feet of separation between principal buildings which are located on the single parcel. So obviously this site would have two separate buildings. There would only be a 6.8 foot separation. So the petitioner needs an additional variance to waive the 13.2 feet from the minimum required 20-foot separation between the northern rear and then the southern front building. Thank you.
All right, questions for staff? Mr. Lineweber.
Alex, do you know if the separation between those buildings is a fire code issue, or I know it's an ordinance, but would that be for fire separation between buildings?
It could be potentially. It is just the provision that's written into the zoning ordinance. One thing that I do think is worthwhile to point out is that it is shown on the plans, more specifically on the site survey. But if you examine the pictures, the site's already been, that connecting breezeway's already been removed, as a matter of fact.
And can you, do you have any information on the building to the north of this that is right next to that parking lot or the other building?
That building was subject to a conditional rezoning a couple of years ago, and that too is now a multiple family building.
Okay. Other questions? No. All right, seeing none, if the petitioner is present, you may come forward and present your case.
Good evening. Yes, just to elaborate on what Alex presented. So this property, it is zoned neighborhood business, and the property immediately to the north, it is that conditional rezoning, which is multifamily. The properties to the east along Mason Court, I believe, are also zoned neighborhood business. However, the building on the northeast corner of 11 and Mason Court is multifamily. And then the two lots north of that along Mason Court, I believe, are both single-family residential. And the lot to the west is also multifamily. That building did catch fire in October of 2022, and it was being used by the previous owner as her office and living quarters. She lived primarily, I think, in the upstairs, but as in the downstairs as well. And then the front of that building was being used as a physical therapy and occupational therapy center. When we purchased this building earlier this year, we were looking at what possible uses we could do with that building, because it just did not seem to have any obvious retail presence, as it was certainly constructed as a residence and office. So we were looking for the best adaptive reuse for that, and we did see that in the zoning ordinance. Section 770-39C5 did allow for residential dwelling units above the first floor of a permitted use when the ground floor street frontage is a permitted use other than parking or special land use. So the way we looked at that, and with the surrounding area, that perhaps it would actually, the best adaptive reuse for that building would be multifamily, and we feel that it would fit in with the surrounding area, as I pointed out a moment ago, that it is a use of mostly multifamily there with some single family across the Mason Court there. So that also, we feel, kind of adheres to the spirit of the ordinance, because we still do have the commercial property up front that is facing 11 Mile, which is a more commercial street. And we thought that, yeah, multifamily would be sort of the best reuse. We did not propose to add any additional square footage to it. Just obviously, as you can see, renovate the facade and then, of course, the interior as well. And that is why we're asking for those variances. One, for that, mainly for the use, but the dimensional variances are obviously just because that is the way that existing building was constructed, and we do not plan to modify the footprint of it in any way.
Okay. Questions for the petitioner? Mr. Gavin.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, sorry, my name is Mike Ray.
Okay. So I saw that there's a letter from your architect, I presume that's your architect right there, addressing the non-use variance aspects of it, but the biggest issue is obviously the transition from neighborhood business to residential. I didn't know if you had any specific comments on any of those. I can even read them off to you if you want, because there's the use variance conditions are that the property could not be reasonably used for purposes permitted in that zone, that the appeal results from unique circumstances peculiar to the property and not in general neighborhood conditions, that the use requested by the variance would not alter the essential characteristics of the area, and that the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having any property, an interest in the property, and that the use will preserve a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zone. So I don't know if that was something you wanted to address. I also have a second question, which is, did you talk to any of the neighbors?
Sure. So I'll start with the first, kind of the basis of the hardship, and go over those. So again, in looking at the way that property is sort of uniquely situated, that building on the north there that was damaged by fire, that was a building built after the primary structure there in front. And again, it was meant to be the previous owner's, really, her residence. And that's the way it was built and designed. So looking at that as a viable commercial use, being tucked away in the back there, especially along Mason Court, which is really, it's a residential court, I guess I'll say, instead of street or road, it absolutely has no real commercial use, and certainly in how that would then affect the residential use to the north, and then the east and west as well. I would think that it would be certainly much more appreciated as a residential use, and would fit certainly better in the character of that Mason Court as residential. And then that kind of ties into, of course, the number two, the unique circumstances peculiar to the property, and not from the general neighborhood conditions. The hardship not being created by any person presently having any interest in the property, as I mentioned, that yes, that was built by the previous owner. We purchased this property early in the year. That fire happened, I believe it was in October of 2022, and that building has been vacant ever since. As to how it would preserve the substantial property rights possessed by other property owners, Again, we're not looking to make that a more intensive use. We're actually looking to make it a less intensive use that fits better, we feel, with Mason Court. And it would benefit, we think, that small little area there and fit in well. I have not specifically talked to anyone in the apartment building to the west. I believe the ones to the north, when I've been out there last, I'm not sure if those are completely occupied yet or not. I could be mistaken if they are. I know when I've been out and about, there was one neighbor that one of the guys that works in our business was out there and talked to him and just kind of told him this is what we were thinking, but we've had no real formal discussions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Clinton.
More question for Alex. The setbacks that are listed here, B and C, these are related to multifamily specifically, correct?
Correct.
So are any of the permitted uses here, would they have lesser setback restrictions, or would they also require variance? Let's say it was office. Would it also have a similar setback request to, or need, I should say?
The previous use of this site was obviously approved as office. The Planning Commission does have the ability to waive such setback requirements. So if the office space was to, I guess, go back into this site, it could be approved administratively.
Even though it looks like there was some multifamily use in there anyways, or the tenant lived in the building or owner lived in the building?
The previous owner, I believe, was a woman that lived in there, yes.
Mr. Wolf.
And again, Alex or Mr. Murphy, it doesn't, if the variances are approved tonight in full, is this the ultimate judicial approval? Can he go and apply for building permits if everything gets approved? Yes, okay.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Reddy.
So your argument was that retail wouldn't be practical there, but what about with the existing office use on the ground floor? To me that doesn't seem like it would be impossible.
I mean, whether that would be impossible, I mean, the way that site is, the way that building currently exists, I don't see office being realistic. I mean, office in general is not, it's worthless in general right now. I mean, that's beyond the point. Office is worthless. That being tucked away where it is in sort of that residential area, we really truly do not feel that anything other than putting that to like I said, a less intensive use to a residential use would be the only viable use.
Any other? All right. There's no other questions for the petitioner. Thank you. We'll open up a public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against this? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Michael Kukulski. I live at actually the end of the street. My backyard comes to it. It's at 630 Chambers Street. I'm actually on the reverse side. I am actually one of the neighbors, and I would like to see some kind of redevelopment, but my concern is that structure is kind of small for a 4-person multifamily unit. The condo actually, one is occupied as a rental, and the other one was for sale. And those variances also caused the electric poles to be redone because it wasn't done right. And that builder that did that went bankrupt, and another one bought it, and he was trying to sell the condo. So some of my concerns is why residential and how much square footage that actually could be versus the one next to it that haven't been for sale. It is more residential. I mean, he's probably right. But is that the right choice? And I would like to see it being redone as it's during the right rainy season and a wind. We still smell the smoke-filled building. So I mean, I don't know if redevelopment versus tear down is right. I mean, I don't know. Can that be done? I mean, it's been empty almost 2 years now. I mean, these are some of my questions I have that haven't. I mean, I hope the panel would address. I mean,
we don't answer.
I know, but I mean, obviously, it's been empty for 2 years and is residential in that state, right? Versus more of a tear down and redevelopment.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments on this?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Gendler. It was a while ago now, but I first wanted to apologize for coming in late. I was putting my 3-month-old to sleep, and I say that both to demonstrate that I have a vested interest in this community and to apologize in advance for any tangents or incoherence in my sleep-deprived brain. I'm here to speak in favor of allowing the variances. When I was a young lawyer, I was a tenant attorney in the San Francisco Bay Area, the OG of the housing crisis in this nation. I represented low-income tenants who were struggling to find any housing whatsoever that they could afford. One client I'm thinking of was a teacher's aide in the public schools. Even with rental assistance, she could not find a single apartment in the entire county that she could afford. She and her children were forced to look further and further out, looking at an hour commute for her job. I tell this story to highlight the importance of having housing of all affordability in our community so that essential members of our society can live here. It's a matter of cohesion, of community, and safety. Allowing this variance will allow for additional housing in Royal Oak, promoting the affordability of housing, the cohesion of our community, the intelligent reuse of our Earth's resources, and a better future for our children. Thank you.
Any other comments? Going once? Going twice? Are you part of the petitioner?
Yeah, I just want to state real fast that we walked through the building and it's structurally sound. Okay. There's the doors, there's some minor there's obviously some damage inside, but it will be repurposed in the per building.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment? Going once? Going twice? All right, we'll close it and bring it to the side of the board for discussion and/or motions. Mr. Wolf.
I'll make a motion to approve all variances in full.
Okay, is there a second? I think it was Mr. Klatt beat you out, Mr. Gavin. Go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
All right, so I'll start with the use variance. The strict, I'll go with number one, strict compliance with the required standard. The unnecessary hardship, sorry, I'm reading two different pieces of paper. The unnecessary hardship is that this was caused by fire. This is an existing building as it was. And, right now there is no reasonable use from an economic point of view for commercial or office or retail. As the petitioner said, there is a oversupply of office, and so actually it would cause, it would be a burden for him. The other thing too is that this will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and the area. Again, there are other multifamily around. I live right off of 11 Mile. This is the first time I've ever seen the building in the back. So I see that as one as well. The other thing too is that nobody else is going to be affected in a negative way by getting rid of this, and most importantly, public safety and the spirit will be followed. Again, I am all in favor of getting rid of blight in Royal Oaks. So that's for the use. For the dimensional. Again, the practical difficulty is that everything is built where it is, and market conditions have changed. Also, again, there was blight. He's trying to fix it up and add more housing. That's all really good stuff. I don't know what would be less relief than what is being asked for. I guess you could ask for a demo, but that's not what we're asked for as well. I think, again, the fire and the way the lot is, this makes it unique. And obviously, unless he caused the fire, which I'm certainly not accusing you of that, there's no self-created things. So.
Okay. Mr. Klatt, anything to add?
Yeah, from a use standpoint, it's a unique lot with a unique existing condition. I think multifamily is a good transitional buffer to the single family to the north. Pretty low intense use with four apartments. So I think it's a good use in that area. And from a dimensional standpoint, they're existing conditions, nothing we can really do about it. So I think the practical difficulties there based on the existing conditions.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Zukin?
I am going to support this motion, and I just wanted to mention when I pulled into this property, I forgot to read the whole packet first, and I had no idea there was a building back there. So I think residential is a lot better use than commercial at this point.
Anyone else? Mr. Laneweber, then Mr. Reddy. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I'll be supporting as well. I think you've done a nice job at kind of making this work for the multifamily in the existing building. It is in a, I'll just echo what it's in an area that I've never been back there before, so it's kind of interesting to see. So it's a unique site. You're keeping the front, which is the retail or business component of the site, and I don't see this as being a hardship, and I look forward to seeing this rebuilt. Support.
Any other comments? Well, I too will be in support. In fact, I'm actually surprised that you didn't do the whole thing on multifamily, just make it consistent there from both buildings on the side, but I'm fine with whatever you want to do on that portion. Yeah, I think great use of bringing that back building back up to snuff by making it a multifamily and be right next to the other condo that's right there. So I definitely don't have a problem, and I think that's the hardship of this being a unique lot coverage, or lot with that building in the back there. So if there's no other comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of passing all the variances signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Congratulations. Best of luck to you. All right. We'll move on to case number 240930, 823 Lexington Boulevard. Whenever you're ready.
The subject property is on the south side of Lexington Boulevard, and it's in the one-family large lot zoning district. The parcel is 70 feet in width, 200 feet in depth, and contains a lot area of 17,500 square feet. The petitioner has submitted a new floor plan and new house plans for the house with a different design. More specifically, the petitioner is proposing a garage which does meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. However, the usable floor area for the house will still be exceeding the 3,500 square foot cap. More specifically, staff calculated the first floor would contain 2,089 square feet of usable floor area. The second floor would contain 2,056 square feet of usable floor area. This combines to 4,145 square feet of usable floor area for the house itself. The petitioner is seeking a variance to waive 645 square feet from the maximum allowable 3,500 square feet of usable floor area in order to construct his new single-family house with the attached garage/accessory structure. Thank you.
All right. Questions? Mr. Klatt?
Alex, I think I know the answer, but I don't have the old site plan or previous site plan handy. Do you know if the applicant increased their side yard setbacks in the new design? I believe they did, but I want to confirm that.
Correct.
Okay, so each side, I think each side's a little bit greater, right?
Yeah, went from 5.3 on each side to 6 and 8 respectively.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I forget, what was the previous square footage they were asking for?
I believe that's written in the packet under prior action.
All right, I'm just trying to find it.
It's 5,000.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
855 square foot reduction.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, the petitioner may come forward and present your case.
Hello, good evening. See you guys again. Sorry, we're a little bit nervous. Wanted to give it a try one more time, and want to thank you guys for giving us another opportunity to kind of represent this new plans that we have. As you can see, we're very committed to this city and this street, and we try to cut down as much as possible on the square feet from the previous plans. As you see it on the plans, the design is completely different. We are very aware of the little bit of the concerns from the neighbors from the previous plan and how cathedral and high peak roofs and all that. So we wanted to cut it down and make it more so it fits more with the street. We cut down about 855 square feet from our previous plan. which was 5,000, and now we're looking for 4,145 square feet. We don't know how to explain ourselves more than saying that we're very excited if we get a chance to actually build our dream home on this street. It's a city that me personally grew in, went to school here. I do a lot of work on this city, and it's a place where we'd like to raise our children, grow our family. So hopefully this second time around, this plan is something that you guys can consider to let us move forward and build the house that we've been planning to for the last year. So again, I don't want to keep this very long debate here, and I know it's been a long night for everybody, but again, I want to say thank you to all of you, and I hope if any of the neighbors are here, they can see how much we're trying to fit in and to give what we could potentially live with and what would be worth it for us to invest to build this home for us. So again, thank you, and we'll be sitting and listening, and hopefully we'll get a approval. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioner? Ms. Zukin, then Mr. Klett.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this floor plan right. You're looking for 5 bedrooms, each with their own bathroom?
It is a 5-bedroom, yes.
Mr. Klett.
No, I just wanted to commend them for, number one, listening to our thoughts and concerns last time, then going back to the drawing board to come up with a new design. So just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me represent it again. So.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Yes, Mr. Reddy.
Did you hear anything from your neighbors in between? I assume they would have been re-noticed, is that right? And we didn't get any?
Last time was a few of them. I know that the neighbor on the right, the neighbor on the left, which all the neighbors are very important, but in certain circumstances, it's always the neighbor on the right, and they were okay even with the previous plans, which I brought letters from them. But again, we saw all the concerns of what people disliked about the house, and we tried to work around as much as we could, and we kind of shrinked it down, to our minimum, what we thought it's worth it for us to actually invest if we want to live here, and that this was our kind of like last draw, to give it a try. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll go to public hearing. Is there anyone to speak for or against this case? Please come forward.
Hi, good evening. Craig Cutler, 208 Mount Vernon Boulevard. Heard a lot of discussion tonight about, it's a small footprint or a big lot or whatever. Arlington Park are all large, deep lots. And I was here last month for a house that got kicked to next month. I'll be here next month. What I'm asking for, and some of the other neighbors are asking for, are to stick with the 4 criteria and to stick with the 3,500 square foot house. We have a house that's on 0.8 of an acre. I mean, what would be allowed to be built there? And that's what we're asking for, is just to try to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood, the green space, the trees, and everything else that comes with preserving the large lots. Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
Evening, George Gomez. I wasn't going to speak on this at this point, but this is perfect timing. I'm going to be going in front of the meeting on Monday to talk about this. We've got a large lot area in which we apply small lot or regular lot rules to. We cap it at 3,500 square feet. I don't know where the prejudice started against people that have more to get more. I'm embarrassed for the gentleman that had to come back here and ask for less than 5,000 square feet. He's not even covering 20% of his property. But that's not your issue, because that's the rules you're trying to live by. But to hear others say that we should cap it, this is a large lot area. We know it. We have 3 of them in the city, and we're not honoring them. Why have it if we're not going to give them the opportunity to have more just because they can. That's just sad. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I've been sitting too long. I didn't take advantage of your little break and walk, and I should have. I'm Dr. Wallace Anderson, 404 Mount Vernon Boulevard, and I have to laugh. There's a play. I've never seen it, but it's called "You're Perfect." You're perfect. I love you. Now change. I think I got that in the wrong order. And so much of what I hear about, especially our large lot area, is, oh, well, you're perfect. We love you. We love being here, but then let's put bigger houses on it. I'm going to stick with the 4 variances as well. You know the ordinance, so does Mr. Smakai, who is a local builder. These zoning ordinance restrictions are part of what makes Arlington Park a desirable subdivision, one where houses are not enormous and where it is a park-like atmosphere. I don't understand for requirement number 1 how restricting the size would unreasonably prevent an owner from using the property for the permitted use, the single-family residence, as described in the city's master plan. The second, as to doing justice, I don't understand how it is unjust to require an applicant to adhere to the zoning ordinances that most of the others in the neighborhood have been restricted by. Justice to the neighborhood involves adhering to the ordinance restrictions as much as possible. Third, how is this lot unique? Even if you use the word imprecisely to mean unusual rather than truly one of a kind and only one, nothing is unusual about the property. It's platted as a rectangular lot. Like all lots in Arlington Park, there are no odd features of hills or rivers or things like that. Fourth, has the alleged hardship been created by any person present having an interest in the property? And certainly the Smakais have a financial interest, but is it a true hardship to be restricted from building a non-compliant house, or is it merely a problem that the purchasers of the property created for themselves? These variance requests threaten the essential character of the Arlington Park subdivision. I do want to point out one other thing, which has been driving me crazy. The Smakais refer to a house currently being built in Lexington that must have gotten zoning variances. A whole lot of us keep coming around and saying, this is quite an edifice and it's really huge and it's out of, it doesn't fit as well. May I have another moment?
Time's up, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
I will just say that, and
I'm not in control of the loud noise. It's automatic, I'm sorry.
An exception is not a precedent.
Thank you. Next person.
You can take some of my time. I know, that's ugly. So we waited a long time. Okay. Siobhan Giffen. Oh, shit, I gotta wait. Sorry, guys. Siobhan Giffen, 405 Lexington Boulevard. I've lived there 40 years, okay? And I have to start off by saying this is not personal, okay? It is not personal. Previously, the family, I don't know if it's called them petitioner, talked about other family members living with them. Okay, I told you at the time, my mom moved in with us, okay? We knew it at the time, and the 3-bedroom house was fine. I have to be very careful at the next point, okay? The next thing happened that my daughter, her wife, and 2 children moved here from Chicago because she's dying, okay? So they lived with us in, again, this small ranch. We had to build
a shower from them in the basement. But, okay, we survived. I wasn't moving. I didn't come here to ask you, you know what I'm saying, to build a bigger lot. So I object to the variance. It's not consistent with the neighborhood. I mentioned the last time, as you know, of the people in these big lots, they sit in their backyard all the time. And people forget that now you're going to be looking at a big, tall house, which isn't consistent. The deer might not show up. They break my heart. We had 4 deer the other day in the neighborhood. So I don't know if anyone's ever mentioned that before. Last but not least, okay? Because neighbors aren't coming here, please do not interpret that as no one objecting. As you know, which I recently learned, and I don't know the exact, we don't get notice of this. I think maybe just what? You'd know better than me, neighbors on either side? So the only reason I'm here is one of the neighbors happened to mention it to me. So last but not least, okay, take a ride down Lexington, the first right block between Washington and Main Street, and take a look at that house that was allowed to be built and see what it does to that block. As, you know, whatever, some Englishman probably said 1,000 years ago, a picture's worth 1,000 words, okay? So I am against the variance. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Hi, my name's Annette Bromley. I'm at 830 Lexington, and I live across the street from the house that's proposed. I wanted to bring up the Arlington discussion where they wanted to take a larger lot and make it into 3 smaller lots. This is kind of the same situation in reverse. It's a medium-sized lot, and we want to put one really, really large house in it. I appreciate the fact that he came down in square footage. My biggest concerns right now are the fact that there's, and I mentioned this before, is that there's about 15 houses on Mount Vernon and Lexington that are all going to be lined up wanting to do the same thing. So you have to, he decreased the square footage, but you are going to have to think, what is the, how much is not too much? Because there will be, and I counted them, there's about 15 more homes that are tear-down type homes down our 2 streets that are going to want to do the same thing. And there's already one slated next month on Mount Vernon that's even bigger. My other concern is, in looking at the new plan, he said he reduced the roof line. If you can please consider or find out from the petitioner how much taller the roof line will be compared to the 2 homes on each side, because I think that has a bearing on your decision. If it's going to be 10 feet taller, the same height, to make it blend in, and also how far back the house is going to be compared to the other houses. So if you can consider that and maybe get some input from the petitioner, we'd appreciate it, and consider that in your decision. Thank you.
Any other comments from going once, going twice? All right, we'll bring it back to this side of the board for comments and or motions. Ms. Zukin.
I don't have a motion yet, but I do have a comment. I think we have to be careful when we're looking at this, that we don't look at it as, oh, they came back and reduced it. This is a new petition, and we have to look at it at its merits. Based on that, I'm willing to hear what everybody has to say.
Okay. Mr. Klatt.
Well, just a few observations. So number one, I believe they're at 20% lot coverage, correct, Alex? Is that what I think I saw on the site plan?
I measured 16%.
Oh, 60%.
Correct.
So they're definitely well below that. And then I hear about, altering the character of the neighborhood. And I struggle with that one a bit because, number one, they're abiding by their setback restrictions. Actually, they provided more. That's why I asked that question earlier. They also comply with their height. We're not design police. I can't tell them how to design the house, but they're meeting those restrictions from a height standpoint and a side-to-side standpoint. So I would just argue that they could, from an optic standpoint, they could stretch that house, side to side and reduce the depth, and you wouldn't notice it. So just one observation from a bulk and area standpoint. So I struggle to see how it changes the character of the neighborhood.
Mr. Langweber?
Of the 645 square feet, and if I'm looking at this properly, 240 square feet of it are open stairwell and that type of area. So the effective floor area, I know that the definition within the city is to treat those like they're built right through, but in fact it's not. It's an open space, roughly 240 square feet.
Mr. Wolf?
See, I was originally against it back in May, and now I'm kind of on the fence, but I'm gonna, the question that keeps coming to mind for me is, what is the practical difficulty that wasn't self-imposed? This for me is still self-imposed, so I don't know. I know that we've approved other in the past that are, within that margin of error that my colleagues that are architects have said really don't make that much of a difference. So I actually would ask my architecture colleagues if they think, based on their professional expertise, that there's that the extra square feet causes a practical difficulty.
I don't know if it causes a practical, I brought it up in a point that it's unnoticeable, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the question I wanted to ask. And
From a street standpoint, from a public way standpoint, if I was on the sidewalk looking at this house, they can stretch it not lot line to lot line, but setback to setback. They're not going over the height. Their setbacks are greater than they were last time, so they provided more. That was my initial thought, but then looking at it, that 600 square feet could be absorbed in the back. Is it the covered patio that you wouldn't even notice from the street?
Right, and that was the question. So I think I'm just going to throw a motion on the table. I'm going to make a motion to approve as is.
Okay, is there a second? I didn't see which one.
We tied.
I'll give it to Rob.
He's giving it to Mr. Gavin for a second. Go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Klatt convinced me. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Gavin, would you like to succinctly put it together?
Sure. By succinctly, you mean go through all our
Yes.
factors in detail?
Yes, thank you, sir.
I'm going to let the lawyer do that.
Mr. Gavin's really good at that.
So, chapters, restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. And I know we denied this the last time, and I'm pretty sure I voted in favor of that denial. But historically, with large lots, we have been much more flexible with the amount of square footage for the property. The fact that this complies with all of the other setbacks and the height requirements and all of that type of issues, I think and with the reduced square footage compared to last time, on top of that, with the reason I was voted in favor of the denial last time was not necessarily because of, the square footage was quite large, but the thing that really tipped me over the edge was these are large lots, yes, but they are narrower and longer than many of the other large lots we have, like along Vincetta. That was the factor that tipped me over. With this reduction in square footage, I'm more in favor of it now. So I believe that it does unreasonably prevent, given the large lot. The variance would do substantial justice to the applicant, and that's a given, as well as to other property owners in the district. I know we have heard from other property owners in the district that they are concerned about a number of things, some of which are not really at issue tonight, like the height and especially the height, the setbacks as well. But I do understand that concern, but I do agree with Mr. Klatt in that you could hide a lot more square footage behind that building and you wouldn't even notice it from the street. So from that perspective, I do think it will be substantial justice to other owners in the district, as well as a lesser relaxation. We could quibble over that, but I think given the size and the square footage overall, I think a lesser relaxation would not be more helpful to the property owner or make much of a difference to the neighbors. The plight of the landowner is due to unique circumstances of the property. I do think that the size and the narrowness of it is a factor here in the unique circumstances of the shape of that property. Because if this were on Vincetta, I don't think it would be a problem at all, just because those properties generally wider and shallower. They're more square. And then the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. I know that's been a discussion tonight. I don't stand by the interpretation that bringing a design to this board is creating the hardship. It's not creating the hardship. We have to be able to hear these variances. If it were to be a design that was presented to us as creating the hardship, then every design would be denied because then it wouldn't be in compliance with the ordinance. So we are here to grant those variances in circumstances that are more difficult with that. I do believe that the correct interpretation is that the hardship, that it's a self-created, and that they went ahead and built it, and now they're asking for forgiveness. So from that perspective, I don't think that's an issue. And there you go.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Reddy?
I'll be opposed. I disagree regarding criteria C, that there's a unique circumstance to this property. I don't think there's anything unique about this property that necessitates more than 3,500 square feet. So I'll be opposed.
Other comments? Ms. Hugan?
I don't think that at least 3 of the criteria were met, so I'm going to have to oppose it. I don't think the owner is prevented from using the property for permitted use. He could still build a big house. I think that it will not do substantial justice to the neighborhood because it's a very quaint, heavily treed, lovely neighborhood, and I think that these new big houses change the character of it. And, they're big lots, but if the city wanted bigger houses on bigger lots, they'd change the ordinance. And I don't think it's our duty to change the ordinance.
Other comments? Once, twice? I will be in favor of this. I think the hardship is the fact this is a large lot district, similar to Mount Vernon and Vincetta, where we've traditionally granted a little bit more leniency. And the problem I had previously was 5,000. In my opinion, 50% over is a lot compared to 20%, which sounds like a lot, but when you see the overall square footage on a lot is 16, it's not much, and it's a lot less compared to other places. The other thing that helps sells it is, while not all the houses in that area are as big, there are several other houses that are quite sometimes as wider than that one that's being proposed and seem more large on the area than it actually is. So I think it's still fitting in with the character of the houses that are there. Any other comments? If not, we'll move to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations. Best luck to you.
Congratulations.
We'll move on to case number 24-09-31, 305 Royal Avenue. Whenever you're ready. You may take it.
Subject site's located on the south side of Royal Avenue, it's west of North Main Street. These parcels on this block are a little bit different because they're called through lots, which means that they have frontage on 2 parallel streets. So in this case, it's Royal to the north and Ellen to the south. And the site is currently developed with a single-family dwelling, and then there's a detached garage located in the rear yard. The petitioner is proposing to construct a new 448 square foot detached open pool pavilion at the rear of the property. So as a through lot, the zoning ordinance require a minimum 25-foot south setback, and then the new proposed pool pavilion will only maintain a 7-foot south setback. So the petitioner needs a variance to waive the 18 feet for the minimum required 25-foot south setback along Ellen.
The zoning ordinance also states that the total ground floor area of all accessory buildings on site can't exceed 800 square feet. So the garage plus the new pool pavilion combined is going to equal 1,020 square feet. The petitioner needs the second variance to waive the 220 square feet from the maximum allowable 800 square foot ground floor area. Just one other thing I'd like to bring up is that pools themselves are not going to be subject to the same setback requirements as accessory buildings. So the placement of the pool is not an issue to the planning division. Also, the petitioner did already apply for a pool permit through the city's building division, but that's not yet been issued. Thank you.
All right, questions? Mr. Klatt?
Maybe it's a petitioner question, but on your site plan, what is that line that runs between the garage and the pool?
Those are overhead wires.
Got it, okay. That's what I thought.
Any other questions?
And obviously that limits where items can be placed. I'm sure there's an easement there.
Correct.
Actually, I'm surprised that garage is as close as it is. See, any other questions? All right, seeing none, petitioner may come forward. Present your case.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing us out. My name is Chris Ramsey. This is my wife, Carrie Ramsey. We're grateful to have you review our variance request this evening. Our variance requests are rooted in our desire to better live out the Royal Oak tagline, Life Now Playing. We believe that adding a pool and an outdoor pavilion to our backyard will help us do that by creating a fun and welcoming environment for our family and friends. My wife is originally from this area, but I grew up in Florida, and that's where she and I met and got married and started a family until moving to Royal Oak in 2016. The weather here actually calls crazy. Actually, we prefer the weather here because in Florida, we rarely wanted to be outside. There's too many things that bite and crawl, and it's a hostile environment. So we're trying to maximize our backyard here in Royal Oak, and we think that this structure and the pool will do that. We were surprised to learn that the backyard is actually not considered a backyard because it's a through lot, and as a result, it's subject to a 25-foot setback. The double lot of our home was the difference maker in us choosing our house in Royal Oak, and we had envisioned creating this outdoor space once our girls and their friends were old enough to enjoy it. We do have a 6-foot privacy fence surrounding our entire backyard. However, we've worked hard to really try to be thoughtful about how this project might affect our neighbors to the sides and behind us. While there's no sidewalk directly behind us, you can see on the images, and Mr. Porsky, I appreciate you putting those up, but you can see on page 4 there are homes. There is no sidewalk across the street, but there are homes on Ellen. And we've reached out to those neighbors as well as 4 additional surrounding households to recruit feedback from them as to whether or not they would be bothered by our building of this pavilion, should we be granted the variance. All 7 households are in full support and have no reservations to our build. And I'd like to point those letters of support out and a map highlighting where those neighbors are on pages 5 through 8. So in closing, we do our best to be great citizens of the city. We participate in community events, support local businesses, pay our taxes, take care of our home, do our best to help our neighbors when and where they might need help. And we appreciate that the zoning rules are rules and that we are not special, but we do hope that the fact that our yard is fenced in, that there's no sidewalk directly behind our home, and that the neighbors who would be immediately impacted by this build are supportive. We hope that those things will help you grant us the variances requested. And my wife, Carrie, and I really appreciate your sincere and thoughtful consideration.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I already answered my question, sorry.
Ms. Zukin, I think? Ms. Zukin, and then you.
My biggest concern is the people along Ellen, because they're facing where you're going to be placing this, and I see you have 311, they don't have a problem. And it's kind of like a blank, an empty space right behind you. But what about 313? Did you talk to them?
We spoke to, so directly behind us, it is blank, I mean, it's part of, it's their side lot, or I guess it's their backyard, it's really their side yard. So we spoke to that house, and their letter is included,
Yeah, they both wrote letters.
and next door to them, which is what's Chris's address? If you look,
Sorry, I don't have their addresses.
house number 1 on the map is the one directly behind us.
What about the one next to them?
That would be Chris. So Chris Pertel, Mrs. Pertel, would be the one to the east of the house that's directly behind us. And the house directly behind us is Sarah and Gary. So both are in support. Both of those neighbors who are directly impacted in line of sight of where this pavilion would go are supportive.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Reddy?
Yes, so my question is, I can see this is a unique lot, and so the setback issue is not that concerning to me, but I don't see what is unique about the lot that necessitates the extra accessory building size, square footage. Do you have an argument for what's unique about this lot that means you need an extra 200 square feet?
I mean, frankly, the pavilion that we are interested in purchasing is prefab. So there are specific sizes. So we're sort of limited with what we could go with. And the other aspect of that is the pool that we're getting is 28 feet. And so the pavilion length matches the pool. We want to make sure that there's good line of sight from the pool, you know, our detached garage from where we stand in our house. Not that we would ever be in the house when the kids are in the pool, but we want to make sure that the line of sight is not interrupted. We want the pavilion and the pool to be in that same, the same shape. So the pool is 28 feet. We'd like the pavilion to be the same. And we want to make sure that with the 28-foot pavilion, it actually requires less columns. So that's where the line of sight comes in, just to knock out 2 additional columns, just so if you're in the backyard, you're not having to look through 2 more columns that could potentially prevent you from seeing somebody who needs help in the pool.
Zukin and then
Sorry.
or did Mr. Clay?
Am I reading this wrong? It looks to me like the pavilion is behind the pool on Ellen, so there's nothing to see through if you want to see the pool from someplace else.
I was referring to when we're in the yard,
You mean in the pavilion?
in our backyard, not on Ellen. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
The pavilion is behind the pool.
That's correct.
So you're talking about seeing them from the pavilion?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Clay?
Oh, I just wanted to double check lot coverage. It's a deep lot, so I assume we're well below 30%.
Yes.
Pretty, okay. And then two, I drove the street, I can't recall, I'm trying to look on Google Earth, but there's a lot of tree coverage. There's other structures, I believe I saw a garage that's pretty close to Ellen too. Are there other structures that are similar? It's just hard to see in Google Earth, I can't really
There's
pinpoint
several garages along Ellen.
That's what I thought. So, and I assume a garage structure like this, those are all non-compliant?
It's possible.
Okay. Or a garage would be compliant, or no, a detached garage that close to Ellen?
No, it would still have to be the 25-foot rear yard
Got it.
setback.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Or questions, I should say, for the petitioner? All right.
If I can make one more statement, yep. One of the reasons, or one of the ways we got here was initially the observation of other structures all the way down Ellen. So in our initial thoughts, we didn't think this was going to be an issue because there were other secondary structures, at least 8 that we can count, which is how we got here. And then as we started to plan and realizing that it's not as simple as what we initially thought, but because there is precedent, we thought we wouldn't have an issue. So again, appreciate your consideration.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. We'll open up to public comment. Anyone to speak on this case, please come forward. Yep.
Good evening, Jeff Chase, 314 Royal. I live directly across the street from the Ramseys. I know you guys have been here for a long time, so I'll just keep it short. Ellen is a different street. These are through lots. If you walk up and down Ellen, it's kind of blank on one side with houses on another. I would prefer, if I was living on that side, to look at something a little bit more. People can put garages up, and this brings a little bit to the neighborhood on that side of the street. Also, it's not a very egregious ask in the opinion of what you've seen here today. Very small. I know the fenced-in lot probably looks big to you, but when you get back there, it's not that big. With the fence obstructing the view of the pavilion and everything, I don't think it's going to deter from the look of the neighborhood at all. I am in favor of it. And, on top of that, they are great people. I know that's not part of a variance, but, they are very well liked in the neighborhood. And as Mr. Klatt said, power lines are there. They run through my backyard. If this was my yard, I have the same depth. I could probably put this all the way up to my neighbor's fence if I wanted to, within 5 feet, I think, of my rear setback. So it wouldn't look any different if this was on another side of the street. So I just want to say I'm in support of it. I hope you guys are too. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. All right, go once, twice, just in case. No. All right, we're close to the side of the board. Discussion and/or motions. Mr. Gavin.
I'll move to approve the variances as requested.
Is there a second? Mr. Klatt. Go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
So as we've discussed previously tonight, this is, the additional square footage for a pool or covered patio or things like that. In this particular instance, chapter's restrictions unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. I think that is correct. I think with the ask for the pool patio to be covered, and the fact that it's still under 10% lot coverage total for accessory floor area, I think it's an unreasonable ask to prevent that. It's not much additional coverage true. The variance will do substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners in the district, which is true for the owners for sure. And then we've heard from other property owners and they are in favor of it, as well as having all those letters, and I appreciate you reaching out to your neighbors for that. Lesser relaxation than that requested would not give substantial relief. I mean, we could make it smaller, but ultimately it would still be over the 800 square feet. So we're going to have to, it would have to do something at some point. Putting up it would have to go over at some point in order for it to make sense. And with the setback, that's going to be an issue no matter what size it is. It's always going to be in the 25 feet. So, plight of the landowner is due to unique circumstances of the property. That's clear. It's with respect to the setback, it's the through lot. That makes complete sense there. And then with the lot coverage or the size of the accessory square footage, I think that's met just by the fact that it fits within the lot, and I think it's something that they should be allowed to do. The alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. They haven't started building it. They haven't done anything yet there. So I think that's met as well.
Mr. Klatt?
I think Mr. Gavin did an excellent job describing the criteria. I think that my first thought was, why can't they push this forward, reduce the setback, but then I saw the power lines. So I think there's some degree of practical difficulty there. It's positioned where it should be. I think the structure is pretty modest in height. There's already a 6-foot high fence in the backyard. It's going to be screened. The neighbor, Mr. Chase, right behind him, has no concern with it. So that's my reasoning.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Moore?
I just want to say thank you for the map with the numbers. I always like to know the proximity of people that write letters.
Other comments? Ms. Zugan?
I'm just a little conflicted on this one because I did go down Ellen, and there's nothing that close to the lot lines. And this is going to be way over the 6-foot fence. But if the people back there aren't concerned, I don't know that I should be.
Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, just to, respectfully disagree with Ms. Zukin, I drove down Ellen and had to actually look to see where it was, and once I drove by, I even stopped my car on Ellen and I looked, and it was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to see it in a Ford pickup truck, so I don't see the problem.
Mr. Gavin?
Last comment I wanted to make. Thanks for sticking with us for like one of the longest meetings in forever.
Other comments? Mr. Lineweber?
Yeah, I think it's a nice use of the space. The yards in the back are, some of them are empty, others have, various garages and things that kind of start to move back there. And I think the look from Ellen towards this is going to be fine with the screen fence, and I'm in support.
Okay. Anyone else? I will be in support too. I think, as other people have stated, the unique part is your lot and being through, as well as it being a pool pavilion structure, which is sort of one of those in-between things that really don't have anything other than counting it as an accessory structure, but I think that's the uniqueness of, hey, you're just trying to give some shade back there. So because of that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Best luck to you. As we're all getting exhausted here. Thank you. And granted, we don't go as long as the planning, which I really feel bad for them sometimes, but yeah. And I believe now we will go to other business. There is none, correct? So then we'll go to general public comment. If there's anyone here for general public comment, you may come forward and speak your piece.
Real quick, and I apologize. Normally, I don't let my emotions get carried away when I talk about these kind of issues or what's happening in architectural or engineering. But to hear people say that we should apply the same size limitation to large lots and realize that some of them aren't even going over 15 to 20%. And the conflict we've created, the hardship we've created is we have a rule that says you can have up to 30%, but you can only have 3,500 square feet. We created that conflict, and that's the one I hope to discuss more with the city on Monday, as well as some of the community, because it just is wrong to me. They've got bigger lots, we call them large lots, and then we cause you folks to have to fight amongst each other as to whether or not that's too much. That's too personal. The only way to be fair is to not be personal about it, to have a rule that makes sense. So I'm going to hopefully get them to consider that in today's world, 5,000 square feet is being asked of you often. I've been looking at how many times you've been asked to do that. So we're going to consider that. But mostly I wanted to come here tonight to just say to you that in the last couple of meetings I've been watching, you folks really are starting to gel together. In my opinion, you don't need to hear that from me necessarily, but I'm the first to admonish you. And I also want to compliment you to say that you're really getting to the rules and you're starting to be a little bit more focused on what's fair to everyone. Once you approve a 5,000 square foot house over by Hendry, you've set the rule. And Dennis Cowan tried to educate you on that last month. The minute you make that rule anywhere, you make it personal when you say no somewhere else. And I don't want to see it taken to court, and I don't want to see it getting ugly. So keep that in mind. He schooled you, because when you disagree with a lawyer, he's going to come back at you with the law. So thank you, folks. You did a great job tonight.
Right. Any other comments? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right. Is there the mystery motion to get us out of here? Who wants it? Mr. Lineweber, I'll give it to you.
Move to adjourn.
I'll give it to Mr. Wolf as a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Good, we're done.
Goodness. Was it long?
I've done longer.
Oh my God, you threw it at me for the first time.
Good night. Bye.